Or the velvet box was open in my palm when my son decided I was lying. Tessa stared at the silver cufflinks as if I had brought a pair of handcuffs to her vow ceremony. She was already dressed, one hand holding up the front of her gown while her friend Maribel adjusted something near the hem. "We agreed there wouldn't be a memorial display," Tessa said. "This isn't a display." I looked at Daniel. "You asked me to bring them." He had asked in my kitchen 2 weeks earlier. He had closed his fingers around my wrist and said, "Mom, I want Dad with me somehow." Now he glanced toward the door. I think Mom misunderstood. For a moment, the room became so quiet I could hear Maribel's bracelet sliding down her arm. I misunderstood. Tessa let out a small laugh, not a happy one. "Widows make everything about the past." I waited for Daniel to say something. He rubbed his thumb over the pale band where his watch usually sat. "Mom," he said, "can you please put those away? Just for today?" That was the question I carried into the ceremony. If my son could make me the problem while standing 3 feet from me, what else had I misunderstood about us? 2 weeks earlier, he had arrived at my house with a white bakery box and the expression he wore whenever he wanted something but hoped I would offer it first. "You brought carbohydrates," I said. "I brought almond croissants, so this is serious." Daniel kissed my cheek and held the box over his head when I reached for it. At 35, he was still capable of turning into the boy who used to hide my reading glasses on top of the refrigerator. He had Paul's height, my dark hair, and a face that looked honest even when he was working up to a lie. "Coffee first," he said. "You don't make the rules in this kitchen. You've been telling me that since 1998, and yet you keep testing the legal system." He smiled, but it faded quickly. My late husband's mug sat beside the coffee maker. It was blue, chipped near the handle, and printed with "World's Okayest Fisherman," though Paul had hated fishing. Daniel had given it to him as a joke after one disastrous weekend on a rented boat. For 4 years, I had kept the mug there, not as a shrine. It held my wooden measuring spoons. Daniel touched the chipped edge with one finger. "You ever going to throw this thing out? You ever going to stop asking questions you don't want answered?" He nodded as if that was fair. We sat at the kitchen table. Daniel tore his croissant into exact halves before eating either one. He had done that since college, claiming it made food last longer. Paul used to tell him this was not how time worked. The vow ceremony was supposed to be small, 42 people at a renovated inn outside Charlottesville, followed by dinner in a glass-walled room overlooking rows of bare trees. Tessa had selected ivory napkins, brass candlesticks, and invitations thick enough to repair drywall. She called the style clean and timeless. I called it beige, but only inside my own head. "You nervous?" I asked. "No." "Then you're doing it wrong." He brushed flakes from his shirt. "Tessa's nervous enough for both of us." I noticed. The previous afternoon, she had texted me 3 times about whether my dress was navy or midnight blue. I had answered navy the first time, then sent a photograph the second. The third message asked me to confirm it would not photograph as black. "What difference does that make?" I had asked Daniel. "She's thinking about the pictures. I'm 63. There are no surprises left in how I photograph. Can you just tell her it's blue?" I told her twice. Tell her once more. That was Daniel's favorite solution. Give Tessa one more reassurance. Give the caterer one more call. Give his Aunt Janice one more explanation about why her gentleman friend of 11 years had not been invited because the guest count was firm. Daniel had spent his engagement carrying cups of water toward every fire Tessa imagined, then looking confused when the rest of us got wet. Still, I understood some of it. Tessa was efficient because she did not trust anything to stay put by itself. She labeled leftovers with dates and kept spare phone chargers in her car. Once, when a drawer in my den jammed, she got down on the rug in an expensive cream sweater, took the whole thing apart, and found a loose screw Daniel and I had been ignoring for 6 months. "Your house is a museum with good plumbing," she'd said, handing me the screw. "Thank you, I think. It's not an insult. Museums are important. You said it while lying under a dead man's desk." She'd gone still, then bumped her head, getting up. We both laughed. For 10 seconds, I thought we might become friends. At the kitchen table, Daniel ate the second half of his croissant and looked toward the doorway leading to the den. "Do you still have Dad's cufflinks? There are questions that walk into a room before you know they've opened the door." "Which ones?" "The silver pair. The plain ones." "They weren't plain. They had little lines around the edges." "Okay, the aggressively decorative little lines." I folded my napkin. "They're in the dresser upstairs." He nodded. Paul had worn those cufflinks when we got married at the courthouse in Richmond. He had owned one decent white shirt and the sleeves were too long. In every photograph, his hands disappeared like a child wearing his father's clothes. Years later, when we could afford better clothes, he still wore those cufflinks to anniversaries and funerals and any dinner where he suspected there might be cloth napkins. Daniel looked at me, then down at the pastry flakes gathered near his thumb. I was thinking maybe I could wear them. The answer came out before I could protect it. "Oh, is that weird?" "No. I don't want to turn it into a whole thing. It doesn't have to be a whole thing." His shoulders dropped. I hadn't realized how tightly he was holding them. "I just want something of his there," he said. "You know?" I knew. Then he glanced toward his phone, face down on the table. "Does Tessa know?" I asked. "I'm going to tell her. That means no. She's been trying to keep the ceremony focused. On the people getting married? Shocking." "Mom." I'm agreeing with her. "No, you're agreeing in your voice. I have one voice. You have at least 7. There's regular, there's customer service, there's Aunt Janice. Aunt Janice requires a special frequency. And there's the one you're using right now." I could have laughed. Usually I would have. Instead, I looked toward the den. Paul's old chair was visible through the doorway, the leather worn pale at the ends of the arms. "What exactly does focused mean?" I asked. Daniel exhaled through his nose. "She doesn't want one of those empty chairs with a photograph on it. Or a memorial table. Her cousin did that and everyone cried through the reception. I never asked for an empty chair. I know, I never asked for a table. I know, I haven't asked to give a speech. I definitely know that." That earned him a look. He reached across and squeezed my wrist. "It's just the cufflinks. Nobody even has to know. Nobody even has to know." There it was, resting between us beside the ruined croissant. I should have told him then that grief kept in secret turns sour. I should have said that if he wanted his father with him, he needed to be able to say so in front of the woman he was marrying. Instead, I looked at my son's hand over mine and remembered Paul teaching him to knot a tie before his first office interview. Daniel had been 22 and furious at the mirror. Paul stood behind him and said, "The tie can smell fear. I'll bring them," I said. Daniel smiled. "Yeah? Yes. Don't put them in a gift bag. I was planning a marching band, and don't mention it to Tessa before I do." "Daniel, I'll tell her." "When?" "I'll tell her." He kissed my forehead on his way out and stole the second croissant. That afternoon, I went upstairs and opened Paul's dresser. I had emptied most of it during the first year. His sweaters went to a church clothing drive. His work shirts went to a man Janice knew whose house had flooded. The socks went directly into the trash because death did not make Paul's socks less appalling. The top drawer still held a few things I had not assigned a future: his watch, 2 tie clips, a folded handkerchief, a birthday card Daniel had made from construction paper when he was much younger. The silver cufflinks were in a black case beneath the watch. They were more tarnished than I remembered. I carried them downstairs, laid an old dish towel across the table, and polished them while evening settled against the windows. My friend Ruth called as I was working. "Are you breathing?" she asked. I was until the phone rang. "You didn't answer my message." "I'm polishing silver." "Good Lord. Who died?" I looked at Paul's cufflinks. Still the same person. Ruth went quiet. We had worked together at the Arts Center for 6 years. She knew when to leave a silence alone and when to walk into it wearing muddy shoes. "Wedding silver?" she asked. "Something like that. You all right?" "Of course." That was customer service, Elaine. I don't care for her. Apparently Daniel was right about the voices. I told Ruth the cufflinks were for him. I did not mention that Tessa didn't know. Saying it aloud would have made the arrangement sound exactly as strange as it was. That's sweet, Ruth said. His father should be represented. Paul would object to the word represented. He'd say he wasn't running for office. There she is. When the call ended, I rubbed the last dark mark from the silver. The cufflinks caught the kitchen light, and for one foolish second, I imagined Paul leaning in the doorway, telling me I had missed a spot. On the morning of the ceremony, I put the velvet box at the bottom of my handbag, under my lipstick and a packet of tissues. The inn smelled of coffee, cut greenery, and the cinnamon candles someone had lit in the lobby. Adults in formal clothes wandered through the hall carrying garment bags and asking one another where they were supposed to be. Tessa moved among them in a satin robe, issuing calm instructions with the intensity of an air traffic controller. When she saw me, she stopped. "Your dress is blue," I had promised. "No, it's perfect." She touched my sleeve. "Really, Elaine, you look beautiful." The warmth in her voice surprised me. It made what happened later harder, not easier. Daniel found me near the staircase and hugged me too fast. His eyes dropped to my handbag. "You brought them?" "Yes. Keep them for a minute. I'll come find you." "Did you talk to her?" A photographer called his name from the landing. "I'll come find you," he repeated. He didn't. 20 minutes before the vows, I went looking for him. I found him in the side room with Tessa and Maribel. I took out the velvet box. Daniel's face changed before Tessa even saw what was inside. By the time someone knocked to say the ceremony was ready to begin, the cufflinks were back under my tissues. Tessa left first. Maribel followed, giving me a look that was either pity or warning. Daniel lingered with his hand on the door. "Mom, please don't do anything." I stared at him. "What do you think I'm going to do?" He had no answer, which was worse than the wrong one. Then he walked out to make his vows, and I followed him with his father hidden in my purse. The aisle ran between rows of wooden chairs toward a stone fireplace covered in white flowers. Somebody had turned down the lights, so the candles along the mantel threw soft shadows over the room. It was beautiful in the disciplined way Tessa liked things. Nothing crooked, nothing faded, nothing present unless it had been deliberately chosen. A young man with a clipboard pointed me toward the first row. There was one chair for me. Across the aisle, Tessa's parents, Walter and Lorraine, had 3 seats between them and Tessa's aunt. Walter gave me an encouraging smile. Lorraine leaned around him and mouthed, "You look lovely." I sat and tucked my handbag under my chair. Aunt Janice slipped into the seat beside me just before the music began. She wore a purple dress and an expression suggesting she had already found fault with several people. "They put me in the second row," she whispered. "You're in the first row. They tried to put me in the second." "Who?" "A woman with a headset. She probably didn't know who you were. That's exactly the problem." Janice settled her purse in her lap. She was Paul's older sister and believed every room came with a natural order that only she could identify. She had been offended for 3 weeks that her partner, Gerald, was not invited, though Gerald considered weddings a form of hostage situation and had thanked Daniel personally. The music changed. Everyone stood. Tessa appeared in the doorway on Walter's arm. Whatever else was true, she looked happy. Not triumphant, not anxious. Happy. Her face softened when she saw Daniel, and Daniel's whole body tilted toward her before she had taken a single step. That was what stopped me from walking out. I could not reduce their life together to the worst sentence Tessa had ever said to me, even if she had said it in a wedding gown. I could not reduce my son to the worst 10 seconds I had ever seen him live through, either. Not yet. Janice touched my elbow as we sat. "Are you crying already?" "No. You sound angry. I'm trying not to sneeze." She opened her purse and offered me a tissue printed with small green frogs. "I have my own. Yours aren't festive." The officiant began by talking about partnership as a daily choice. Daniel held Tessa's hands and watched her as though no one else existed. I found myself looking at his cuffs. He wore a new white shirt fastened with small pearl buttons. The velvet box seemed to grow heavier under my chair. Tessa went first. She promised to tell Daniel the truth even when truth was inconvenient. She promised to make a home with him that belonged to both of them. Her voice broke when she said she would protect the life they were building from fear, habit, and everything that asked them to live backward. No one else reacted to that phrase. Perhaps no one else heard it the way I did. Daniel smiled, squeezed her hands, and began his vows. He spoke about Tessa's courage, her lists, the emergency snacks she kept in every bag she owned. People laughed when he described finding a granola bar in an evening clutch, barely large enough to hold a credit card. It was a small granola bar, Tessa said. It was load-bearing, he told the guests. Even I laughed. Then Daniel said she made him want to become someone who could meet the future without flinching. His voice trembled. I watched him take a breath, and for an instant I saw Paul at our kitchen counter, patiently teaching him how to slice an onion without taking off a finger. Daniel promised honesty. The word entered the room and disappeared without making a sound. When the officiant pronounced them married, everyone stood and applauded. Daniel kissed Tessa. Walter wiped both eyes with the heel of one hand, and Lorraine laughed at him while crying just as hard. Janice clapped twice, then leaned toward me. Paul would have loved this place. I looked straight ahead. Yes. He would have complained about the chairs. Yes. And the parking, especially the parking. She smiled. I miss him. The simple honesty of it nearly undid me. Afterward, the guests were guided into a long hallway for drinks, while the room was changed for dinner. Servers carried trays of sparkling wine and tiny pastry shells filled with mushrooms. Someone played soft jazz through hidden speakers. Daniel and Tessa were immediately surrounded. They hugged people, posed for photographs, and accepted praise as though they had personally invented marriage. I stood near a window with Janice. "Where's Gerald tonight?" Lorraine asked when she joined us. "Home in sweatpants, eating a sandwich he didn't pay $70 for," Janice said. Lorraine blinked. "He sends his love," I translated. "That's sweet." "He does not," Janice said. "He barely knows them." Walter came over carrying 3 glasses of sparkling wine. He handed one to me, one to Lorraine, and kept the third. "I'm glad you're here," he said. It was such a normal thing to say that I almost asked why I wouldn't be. "Thank you. You did a good job with him." Walter nodded toward Daniel, who was laughing with Maribel and 2 men from his office. He came mostly assembled. The best ones do. Lorraine touched my arm. "Tessa has been impossible for 3 months. I hope you haven't taken any of it personally." "Lorraine," Walter said. "What?" "She knows. Tessa knows. The florist knows." Janice lifted her glass. "I don't know, and I'd like details." Lorraine smiled, but something moved behind it. She just wants everything to feel new. "That's hard to arrange at a wedding," Janice said. "Most of the material is quite old." I took a long drink. The photographer found us and began collecting relatives by category. Tessa with her parents, Daniel with me. The couple with both sets of parents, which meant 3 people on Tessa's side and 1 on Daniel's. Janice attempted to join and was politely removed. For my photograph with Daniel, I stood beside him in front of the fireplace. He put an arm around me. His body was warm through his jacket. "Closer," the photographer said. Daniel pulled me against him. Perfect. "Mom." Chin slightly down. I obeyed. "Beautiful. Look at your son." I turned my face. Daniel kept smiling at the camera. "What did I misunderstand?" I asked quietly. His arm tightened around my shoulders. "Not now. You said I misunderstood." "Mom, did you ask for the cufflinks?" The camera clicked 3 times. "Great," the photographer said. "Now one with the bride." Tessa stepped in on Daniel's other side. Her bouquet brushed his jacket. For half a second, none of us knew where to put our hands. "Mom, come around here," the photographer said, moving me beside Tessa. Tessa's arm settled lightly across my back. Her fingertips barely touched the fabric of my dress. "Everyone together," the photographer said. "Wonderful. Elaine, can you take one small step inward?" I moved closer. "That's it. Happy family." The flash went off. Tessa's hand dropped immediately. At dinner, I was seated with Janice, 3 of Daniel's colleagues, and a couple named Stan and Beth, who had known Walter since college. Daniel and Tessa sat at a small table for 2 near the windows. There was no empty chair anywhere. A folded card at each place listed the evening's schedule. Welcome, first course, toasts, entree, cake, dancing. The card was thick, cream-colored, and perfectly centered above each plate. "You aren't eating," Janice said. "I'm eating. You moved 1 carrot. It was in my way." She lowered her voice. "What happened? Nothing happened. You're using the voice. I'm at a wedding. This is my wedding voice." "No, your wedding voice is louder and asks where the ladies' room is." Across the room, Tessa laughed at something Daniel whispered to her. He touched the back of her neck. She leaned into him. I thought about the side room, the way he had said, "I think Mom misunderstood." Not even a full lie. He had built himself a little doorway he could squeeze through later. He could say he had been confused. He could say he had meant the timing, not the request. He could say I had caught him under pressure. Daniel had always been good at leaving himself an exit. When he was 19, he dented Paul's car and claimed he had come outside to find it like that. Paul made him stand in the driveway while they studied a blue smear of paint that exactly matched the gatepost. "Cars are mysterious," Daniel had said. Paul had laughed so hard he could not stay angry. I had laughed too. Now Walter stood to give his toast. He welcomed Daniel into the family and said marriage was not about finding a person who never disappointed you. It was about finding the person whose disappointments you were willing to understand. "Walter?" Lorraine murmured loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Make it sound happier." The room laughed. "I am getting there," he said. "Eventually." He told Tessa she had always been determined to create a life that was entirely her own. As a girl, she had refused hand-me-down clothes because she claimed they came with other people's memories in the pockets. Lorraine shook her head, smiling. Tessa looked down at her plate. Walter raised his glass. "May you two make something new without forgetting all the love that got you here." Daniel's eyes flicked toward me. I did not raise my glass until Janice nudged my wrist. Later, Daniel crossed the room while Tessa was speaking to Maribel. I thought he was finally coming to me, but he stopped at the table behind mine to greet Stan and Beth. He shook Stan's hand, kissed Beth's cheek, and listened while they praised the ceremony. I turned back to my plate. "Go talk to him," Janice said. "He knows where I am. You two have had a fight. We have not. He's avoiding you. Then going to him would ruin all his hard work." Janice studied me. She could be vain, intrusive, and exhausting, but she had known me for 39 years. She had sat beside me in the hospital after Paul died and criticized the coffee until I remembered how to speak. "What did he do?" she asked. I looked at her. "Not here," I said. She nodded once. "All right." The cake was cut just after 9. Tessa fed Daniel a neat bite. Daniel put too much frosting on her nose, and she stared at him for one dangerous second before laughing. I stayed long enough to see them take their first turn across the dance floor. Then I found my coat. Maribel was near the lobby, barefoot and carrying her shoes. "You're leaving?" she asked. "I'm tired." She glanced toward the reception room. He should have told her. The words stopped me. "So you heard?" "I was in the room. I meant before." Maribel shifted her shoes to the other hand. Tessa would have been upset, but not like that. She hates being surprised. He was the one who surprised her. "I know." "Does she?" Maribel looked down. That was answer enough. Outside, the cold bit through my dress before I reached the parking lot. Music pressed faintly against the inn's windows. In one of them, I could see people moving under the lights, their bodies reduced to warm, blurred shapes. My handbag rested on the passenger seat during the drive home. At every turn, something inside it slid softly from one side to the other. When I reached my house, I left my coat on and went straight to the kitchen. Paul's blue mug stood beside the coffee maker, full of wooden spoons. I opened my handbag, removed the tissues and lipstick, and set the velvet box on the table. I did not open it. For once, I had no interest in looking backward. I took off my shoes, left them in the middle of the kitchen floor, and stood there in my coat until the heat came on. My phone buzzed inside the handbag. Daniel had written, "Where did you go?" A second message appeared before I could decide whether to answer. Tessa wanted to say goodnight. I looked at the velvet box on the table. Then, "Mom," I typed. I was tired. "Beautiful ceremony. Congratulations to you both." The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then returned. "You could have told us you were leaving." I almost wrote, "You spent 4 hours making sure you were never alone with me." Instead, I set the phone face down. It buzzed once more against the wood. "We'll talk when we get back." The message sounded less like an invitation than a notice posted on a door. I hung my coat, removed the pins from my hair, and washed off makeup that had settled into every line on my face. When I came downstairs again, the velvet box was still on the table, patient as a bill. I carried it upstairs. Paul's dresser drawer stuck halfway, as it always did in damp weather. I pulled harder. The drawer came loose with a jerk, rattling his watch and tie clips. I put the cufflinks beneath the folded handkerchief instead of inside their old black case. I did not want to see them waiting neatly where they had been. My phone rang while I was changing into pajamas. Janice. I let it stop. She called again. On the 3rd call, I answered. "Is someone bleeding?" "You left without saying goodbye. Apparently that's tonight's emergency. I looked for you during the dancing. Some man from accounting tried to teach me a line dance. You hate line dancing. I hate being instructed by accountants. I sat on the edge of the bed. Did you have a good time?" "No. The chairs were terrible, and Gerald sent me a photograph of himself eating pie. That sounds like Gerald. He wanted me to know he was happier than I was. He probably was." Janice waited. I could hear road noise behind her and the faint ticking of her turn signal. "What happened before the ceremony?" she asked. "Are you driving?" "I'm stopped at a light." "Call me when you're home. The light is very long." "Janice." "Fine." She called 12 minutes later. This time Gerald answered when I picked up. "Your sister-in-law is pacing," he said. "Your partner is nosy. She says that's not relevant." "It's extremely relevant." Janice took the phone from him. "Tell me." I lay back against the pillows and looked at the ceiling. There was a small water stain above Paul's side of the bed that I had been meaning to paint for 2 years. "Daniel asked for Paul's cufflinks," I said. "For the ceremony?" "Yes." "That's lovely." "He asked me not to tell Tessa." "That's less lovely." I told her the rest without adding anything. I did not imitate Tessa's voice or describe Daniel's expression. I repeated the words exactly. Janice was silent for so long I wondered whether the call had dropped. Then she said, "I'm going to wring his neck." "No, you are not. I changed his diapers." "Not recently, I hope. Don't make me laugh. I'm furious." "So am I." "He let her say that to you?" "Yes, I'm calling him." "No. Elaine, I am not going to have the family divide into committees. You are not calling him on my behalf. I'll call him on my behalf. You learned about it from me. I also have eyes. He avoided you all evening. So you noticed. Everyone with a functioning nervous system noticed." I closed my eyes. Janice softened. "Why did you stay?" "I don't know." That was not entirely true. I had stayed because leaving before the vows would have become the story. Elaine couldn't stand that Daniel was moving forward. Elaine made a scene. Elaine turned the ceremony into a referendum on grief. I had stayed because I loved him. The 2 explanations did not feel separate. "You should have come home with me," Janice said. "To watch Gerald eat pie? I would have made him share." In the background, Gerald said, "No, you wouldn't." For a minute, none of us spoke. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Go to sleep. I mean about Daniel. I know what you meant." The next morning, I found a message from Tessa sent at 1:18. "Thank you for being part of our day. I know emotions were high. We love you and look forward to celebrating together when we're home." It read like the card attached to a corporate fruit basket. I answered, "Have a safe trip." That was all I trusted myself to say. At the art center on Monday, Ruth took one look at me and handed me a box cutter. "We have 6 cartons of clay to open," she said. "You look like you need to destroy something in a supervised environment." "I'm fine. You're wearing 2 different earrings." I touched my left ear, then my right. 1 pearl, 1 small gold hoop. I'm expressing range. "Of course you are." We worked in the supply room, cutting tape and lifting gray blocks of clay onto metal shelves. The Arts Center occupied an old brick schoolhouse with radiators that clanged like prisoners, demanding release. On most mornings, I handled class registrations and helped adults who had always wanted to paint convince themselves they were allowed to be terrible at it. Ruth waited until we had opened the 4th carton. "How was the wedding?" "Beautiful." "How was Daniel?" "Married." "How was Tessa?" "Also married." Ruth leaned against the shelf. "I see." "No, you don't. I see enough to know you're going to make me wait." I shoved an empty carton flat with my foot. "I don't want to tell it too many times. Then don't tell it until you know what it is." That was why I loved Ruth. She could be loud for 6 consecutive hours, but when something mattered, she did not dig. At lunch, my phone filled with photographs from the ceremony. Lorraine sent one of Daniel and Tessa beneath the flowers. Maribel sent a picture of Tessa laughing during the cake cutting. The official photographer's preview included the portrait of Daniel with his arm around me. "Look at your son," the photographer had said. In the photograph, I was looking at him. He was looking straight ahead, smiling beautifully for someone who knew the camera could not record sound. I saved the picture anyway. Daniel and Tessa spent 5 days at a mountain resort. I knew because Daniel sent pictures to the family message thread. Fog over the trees, 2 champagne glasses beside a fireplace, Tessa in a red coat holding a mug. I tapped the little heart under each one. Privately, he sent nothing. On Friday afternoon, Lorraine called while I was sorting class invoices. "I'm sorry to bother you at work," she said. "I wanted to check whether I should bring anything Sunday." Sunday? For the brunch. My hand stopped over the keyboard. "What brunch?" There was a pause. I may have gotten ahead of things. "I don't think you did. Daniel said you usually do a family meal after big events. My sister and her husband extended their trip, so we thought, I thought I haven't spoken to Daniel about it." "Oh, I'm sure it was a misunderstanding." The word came out before I could stop it. Lorraine cleared her throat. "Would you like me to host? Our house is a bit upside down, but Walter can put the dining table back together. Why is it apart? He believed he could refinish it in a weekend. Is Walter familiar with weekends? Not in the traditional sense." I smiled despite myself. "Let me speak with Daniel," I said. He called 20 minutes later. "Mom, I'm sorry. I thought I'd mentioned the brunch." "You did not. We talked about it before the wedding. We talked about maybe having a meal after you got back." "Right. That's the brunch. No, that was an unfinished conversation." He sighed. Behind him, I heard a rolling suitcase bump over something, then Tessa asking whether he had seen her gloves. "We're just leaving," he said. "Can we figure out the menu tomorrow? I'm not hosting." The background sound stopped. "What? I'm not hosting on Sunday. Because of the cufflinks? Because of what happened around the cufflinks? Mom, we knew you were upset, but canceling on everybody isn't fair. I haven't canceled anything. Nobody asked me. We thought it was understood. That's the problem with understanding things that haven't been said." He lowered his voice. "Tessa's family stayed in town for this. I didn't ask them to." "Okay, but they did. Then you and Tessa should decide how to spend time with them. Tessa was right here when you said we'd do something after the trip." "Something. Not a brunch at my house for people I barely know. You've hosted people you barely know before." "Yes." "Then what's different?" He knew what was different. He was asking me to say it so he could object to my tone. Have you told Tessa that you asked me for the cufflinks? A door closed on his end. This isn't a good time. That's becoming a theme. I told her we'd talked about Dad's things. That isn't what I asked. Mom, she was blindsided. You walked in right before the ceremony and opened a box of my dead father's jewelry. Your dead father? You know what I mean. I do. I'm not sure you do. He exhaled hard. She shouldn't have said what she said. No. But you also should have waited for me to come find you. You told me you would. 20 minutes passed. I was getting married, and I was trying to do what you asked. I know. It was the first honest thing he had said, and he said it so quietly, I nearly missed it. Then tell her, I said. I will. You told me that before. This is between me and my wife. Then stop placing me in the middle of it. Silence. When he spoke again, his voice had gone cold. So Sunday is punishment. No, Sunday is me not setting my table for 12 people and pretending you didn't let your wife call me a pathetic widow because you were afraid to admit you missed your father. I never called you pathetic. You didn't call me anything. That's not fair. No, I said. It wasn't. Tessa said something in the background. Daniel answered her, too low for me to hear. We'll come by tomorrow, he said. I didn't invite you. Mom, we need to talk in person. I looked through the office window into the pottery studio. Ruth was helping a gray-haired man rescue a bowl that had collapsed on the wheel. Both of them were laughing, their hands covered in clay. Call first, I said. Daniel made a sound between a sigh and a laugh. I always call. No, you announce. I ended the call before he could answer. Ruth appeared in the doorway a minute later, wiping her hands on her apron. You okay? I turned my phone face down. No, I said. It was a relief to use the right voice. Ruth pulled out the chair beside my desk and sat backward in it, folding her arms over the backrest. Do you need me to ask questions or make coffee? Coffee. Excellent. Questions are more work. She returned with 2 mugs from the break room. Mine said, Create fearlessly in gold letters. Ruth's said, World's best grandma, though Ruth had never had children and bought it at a thrift store because she enjoyed accepting compliments under false pretenses. I wrapped both hands around my mug. Daniel expects me to host brunch for Tessa's relatives, I said. I thought the wedding was over. So did I. Did you invite them? Apparently my history of feeding people counts as a standing invitation. Ruth sipped her coffee. Do you want to host? No. Then I have completed my questions. You asked one. I'm efficient. I told her about the phone call, though not about the cufflinks. I still couldn't make myself repeat that part to someone who had not known Paul. It felt too intimate, like describing the inside of his coat pockets. Ruth listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, People get confused when the reliable person stops being convenient. That sounds like something printed on a decorative pillow. I could add leaves around it. I don't want to be dramatic. Then don't set anything on fire. I wasn't planning to. Good. You're terrible with the extinguisher. By the time I left work, Daniel had sent 2 messages. Can we come by at 10 tomorrow? Then, before I answered, we'll call first. I wrote, 10 is fine. At 9:58 the following morning, he called from my driveway. We're here. I can see that. Just letting you know, you're learning. Are you going to make every sentence painful? Come inside, Daniel. Tessa entered carrying a folded blue shawl. She had worn it over her shoulders at the reception, though I remembered it spending most of the evening on the back of a chair. I brought this back, she said. It isn't mine. She looked at the shawl. Maribel said it was. Maribel had 3 glasses of champagne before dinner. Oh. Put it in the hall. We'll solve the mystery later. Tessa laid it over a chair with excessive care. Daniel carried a small white box from the bakery that had made their wedding cake. We brought leftovers, he said. I had cake. You left before they packed it. I was present for the cutting. His mouth tightened. The 3 of us moved into the kitchen. I had made coffee but nothing to eat. This was apparently noticeable. Daniel looked at the empty counter, then opened the bakery box himself. Inside were 2 slices of cake, one mostly vanilla and one with a thick band of frosting. Plates? He asked. Same cabinet they've been in since you were 12. Tessa sat at the table. She wore black pants, a soft green sweater, and no makeup. Without the precise machinery of the wedding around her, she looked younger and more tired. Daniel placed the larger slice in front of her. I don't want cake, she said. You loved it Thursday. I loved it at the wedding. It's 10 in the morning. He turned the plate toward himself. Your loss. It was an ordinary exchange, but something in Tessa's face suggested they had already been arguing before they arrived. I poured coffee. Daniel took his with cream. Tessa asked for tea, which I should have remembered but did not. While the water heated, nobody spoke. Finally, Tessa said, I don't want this to grow into something bigger than it was. The kettle clicked off. What was it? I asked. She looked at Daniel. He concentrated on cutting the frosting from his cake. Tessa turned back to me. It was a stressful moment before the ceremony. We were all emotional. I wasn't emotional until you spoke to me. That isn't what I meant. I put a tea bag in a cup and set it in front of her. What did you mean? Daniel lowered his fork. Mom, we came to clear the air. The air is here. Clear it. He gave me the tired look he used when he wanted me to recognize that I was being difficult. Usually it worked. I would hear Paul's voice telling me not to corner the boy, even when the boy was 6 feet tall and had a retirement account. Tessa wrapped the tea string around the handle of her cup. I felt ambushed, she said. We'd been very clear about not turning the ceremony into a memorial. Who is we? Daniel and me. I looked at him. Did you tell Tessa you wanted to wear the cufflinks? Daniel pushed his plate away. We talked about having something of Dad's there. Tessa's eyes narrowed. No, we didn't. I mentioned it. You told me your mother might offer you something, and you said you would handle it. The room shifted. Daniel glanced at her. That's not exactly... What did you ask me for? I said. Mom, what did you ask me for in this kitchen? He looked between us, judging which truth would cost him less. I asked if she still had them. That isn't all you asked, I said. Tessa sat back. Did you ask her to bring them? I said I might want to wear them. Might? Daniel's face reddened. Why are we doing an interrogation? Because you told me she was having trouble accepting that we didn't want a memorial, Tessa said. You made it sound like this was her idea. I didn't make it sound like anything. You specifically said you didn't want to hurt her feelings. That was true. Tessa laughed once without humor. Unbelievable. For a brief, ugly second, I felt vindicated. Then I saw Daniel's expression. He looked trapped, and despite everything, an old instinct rose in me. Soften the room, change the subject, give him a path out. I picked up the coffee pot. No one needed more coffee. I set it back down. Tessa, I said, he asked me to bring the cufflinks. He asked me not to tell you until he had spoken to you. When were you planning to speak to me? She asked him. I was waiting for the right moment. You had 2 weeks. The wedding was stressful. For me, too. I know. No, Daniel. You keep saying that as if knowing is the same as telling the truth. He stared at her. It was almost the same thing I had said, and neither of us enjoyed the resemblance. Tessa turned to me. You should have told me. He asked me not to. You knew I didn't want anything like that at the ceremony. I knew you didn't want an empty chair or a memorial table. I did not know a pair of cufflinks under your future husband's jacket would threaten the mood. It wasn't the cufflinks. It was being surprised 10 minutes before I walked down the aisle. That part I understand. She blinked, as if agreement had not been one of the possible outcomes. I should have made him speak to you earlier, I said. I should not have agreed to carry a secret into your ceremony. But I did not bring those cufflinks because I wanted attention. I didn't say you wanted attention. You said widows make everything about the past. Her fingers tightened around the cup. I shouldn't have said it that way. Was there a better way to say it? Daniel rubbed both hands over his face. Can we not do this? Tessa looked at him. You wanted to talk. I wanted everyone to calm down. Everyone was calm before you started lying, she said. I didn't lie. You stood there and said she misunderstood. I was trying to stop an argument before our vows. You stopped it by making your mother look confused. He looked at me for help. It was so automatic that he did not seem to know he had done it. I folded my hands on the table. Don't look at me, I said. I'm not. You are. He stood and carried his plate to the sink. This is exactly why I didn't tell you, Tessa. I knew you would turn it into some test of whether I'm ready to move on. From your father. I never asked you to move on from your father. You didn't have to. Tessa's face changed. The anger remained, but something uncertain entered beneath it. What does that mean? Nothing. It clearly means something. He turned on the faucet, though the plate did not require immediate washing. I realized then that the cufflinks were not the argument. They were merely the object that had survived it. Tessa looked down at her tea. I'm sorry I said that to you, Elaine. Daniel turned off the water. She continued before I could answer. It was cruel. I was angry, and I thought you were trying to bring something into the ceremony after we had said no. That doesn't make it acceptable. It was not the apology I expected. There was no request for me to appreciate her stress. No tears, no reach across the table. Thank you, I said. Her shoulders loosened slightly. Then Daniel said, So can we put this behind us and have brunch tomorrow? Tessa closed her eyes. I almost laughed. It would have been easier if he had meant it as a joke. No, I said. His jaw set. She apologized. Yes. What else do you want? I want not to host brunch. You're still punishing us. This conversation does not obligate me to set a table. Tessa's aunt and uncle stayed an extra 3 days. They can eat somewhere else. Mom, you do Sunday meals all the time. I used to. Both of them looked at me. Tessa spoke first. What does that mean? It means I'm not hosting tomorrow. It also means I'm taking a break from Sunday dinners. Daniel stared. Because of one bad moment? One bad moment told me how much you expect me to swallow so everyone else can eat comfortably. That's dramatic. Then you should be relieved I'm keeping it out of the dining room. He grabbed his coat from the chair. Tessa did not move. Daniel, we came here to apologize. She got her apology. I stood. I did not ask you to come. No. You just canceled plans and waited for us to figure out why. Plans no one made with me. Tessa rose more slowly. She carried her untouched tea to the sink and placed it beside Daniel's cake plate. Thank you for talking to us, she said. Daniel gave her a look. What? She asked. She did talk to us. At the door, she picked up the blue shawl. You may as well take that, I said. It's not mine. It isn't mine either. She looked down at it, and an exhausted smile tugged at one corner of her mouth. Maybe it lives here now, not without paying rent. The smile disappeared almost as quickly as it came, but I had seen it. Daniel opened the door. He did not kiss my cheek. He did not say goodbye. Tessa followed him onto the porch, carrying a stranger's shawl and the uncomfortable truth about the man she had just married. The following morning, Lorraine texted to say they had found a restaurant with a table large enough for everyone. We would love you to join us. I typed 3 different excuses, erased them, and finally wrote, Thank you, but I'm going to stay home today. I hope you have a wonderful brunch. At noon, I stood in my kitchen staring at the empty table. Sunday dinner had been a habit for so long that my body kept preparing for it without permission. I had bought too many potatoes. A pot roast sat in the refrigerator. At 11:30, I had nearly taken it out. Instead, I made scrambled eggs and burned the toast. My phone chimed with a photograph in the family thread. Everyone was gathered around 2 pushed-together restaurant tables. Walter held up a glass. Lorraine leaned against him. Janice had apparently invited herself and was seated beside Tessa's aunt. Daniel stood behind Tessa with his hand on her shoulder. There was an empty space at the edge where another chair could have fit. I set the phone face down and ate alone. The eggs were cold before I finished them. Janice called while I was wrapping the untouched pot roast for the freezer. I can explain, she said. I didn't ask. That's how I know I need to. You look very comfortable in the photograph. The chair was good. Better than the ceremony chairs. I'm glad. Lorraine called this morning. She said you weren't coming and asked if I wanted your seat. You didn't have plans with Gerald? Gerald was watching golf and making soup. Gerald makes soup? He opens cans with purpose. I slid the roast onto the bottom shelf of the freezer. There were already 2 containers of stew and a casserole I had made when I still believed every Sunday required enough food to survive a weather emergency. You could have told me you were going, I said. You could have come. I was invited. Then why didn't you? You know why. I know Daniel behaved terribly. I don't know why that means you have to sit home eating whatever sad thing you made for yourself. I burned toast. I knew it. You did not. I could feel it. I closed the freezer door harder than necessary. Did everyone discuss me? Only after the menus came. Wonderful. Daniel said you were taking some space because the wedding brought up a lot of feelings about Paul. I leaned against the refrigerator. Of course he did. Tessa said it was more complicated than that. That surprised me enough to quiet me. What exactly did she say? Exactly that. Lorraine asked whether you were all right, and Daniel started talking about grief. Tessa told him, "It's more complicated than that." Then Walter asked if anybody wanted calamari. Walter is a wise man. He ordered 2. What did you say? Nothing. Janice, you told me not to form a committee. So you went undercover? I ate eggs and observed. You aren't subtle enough for undercover work. That's unfair. Tessa's aunt told me all about her gallbladder. That means she trusted you. It means the Bloody Marys were strong. I took a cloth from the sink and wiped a clean section of counter. Did Daniel seem angry? I asked. At you? At anybody. Janice hesitated. He seemed cheerful. I knew exactly what she meant. Daniel's cheerfulness could become aggressive when he was upset. He made jokes, refilled glasses, and asked everyone questions so nobody could ask him one. Tessa was quiet, Janice continued. Not rude, just watching him. I folded the cloth twice. Don't call him, I said. I haven't. Don't call Tessa either. I don't have her number. You absolutely have her number. I have a number. I'm not convinced it reaches the real Tessa. Stay out of it. Janice sighed. Fine. But next Sunday, come to my house. Do you cook? No. Then what would we do? Order something and complain. That does sound like family. When we hung up, I opened the family message thread and looked at the restaurant photograph again. Daniel's smile was broad. Tessa's was smaller. Her eyes were turned toward him rather than the camera. I tapped the little heart beneath the picture. Then I hated myself for wondering what everyone would think if I didn't. During the week, people contacted me in careful, indirect ways. Lorraine sent a photograph of the centerpieces she had taken home from the ceremony, now arranged in 3 smaller vases. Walter forwarded a joke about husbands misunderstanding home improvement projects. Maribel thanked me for being so gracious at the wedding, a compliment that felt like being praised for remaining conscious during surgery. Daniel sent nothing. Sunday arrived again. At 10, I found myself standing in the grocery store with a large bag of carrots in my cart. I did not need 6 pounds of carrots. For years, I had shopped for the possibility that Daniel might bring someone. In college, it was roommates. Later, it was women whose names I sometimes learned after they had eaten 2 helpings. When he began dating Tessa, it was Tessa and then Maribel, and once Walter and Lorraine, who had arrived with wine and stayed until nearly midnight. I put the carrots back and bought 4 loose ones. At home, I made coffee in Paul's mug by mistake. I did not notice until I carried it to the table. Sorry, I said aloud. Then I sat and drank from it. Nothing happened. Paul did not descend from the ceiling. The mug did not crack. I did not forget him because my mouth touched the same chipped rim his had. At noon, Ruth texted that she and 2 women from the Arts Center were going to a matinee at a small theater downtown. We have an extra ticket. Wear matching earrings if possible. My first instinct was to refuse. Sunday afternoons belonged to grocery bags, ovens, and the sound of Daniel opening my refrigerator as if food might have changed since the previous week. I typed, "What's the play?" Ruth answered, "No idea." Celia bought the tickets. Could be 3 hours of experimental screaming. I went. The play was a comedy about 4 middle-aged women trapped together in an airport hotel during a snowstorm. It was not good. One actress lost a shoe during a dance number, and a fake wall shook every time anyone closed the door. I laughed until my face hurt. Afterward, we ate hamburgers at a narrow restaurant with red vinyl booths. Celia, the Arts Center's director, slid a folded brochure across the table. "Before you say no," she told me, "say maybe." I haven't said anything. Your face said no in 3 languages. The brochure showed a sunlit adobe building in New Mexico. A regional arts organization there was looking for an experienced program coordinator for a month-long residency. The work involved helping visiting artists run community workshops, managing registrations, and keeping the studio schedule from collapsing. "This is for artists," I said. "It's for people who prevent artists from accidentally setting curtains on fire. That is a marketable skill. You'd be perfect. I have work here. We can cover a month." I folded the brochure. "I'm not going to New Mexico. You always say that. How often have you asked?" "Twice." The first time had been the year after Paul died. The second time, Daniel had just moved into a new apartment and called me every other day because he could not figure out why the washing machine smelled like a pond. I had told Celia I couldn't be away that long. She dipped a French fry into mustard. "Applications close in 3 weeks. I'm not applying." "Keep the brochure so I don't have to recycle it." I put it in my purse. That Wednesday, Daniel called at 9:43 at night. "Are you awake?" I answered the phone. "You could answer in your sleep. I'd be more pleasant." He did not laugh. I sat up against the headboard. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. You inherited many things from your father." Lying convincingly was not one of them. He breathed into the phone. "Can I come over?" "Now?" "I'm 10 minutes away." I looked at the clock. "You were already coming." "I was going to drive around if you said no." "Drive around where?" "I don't know, Mom. Fine. The door is unlocked." He arrived wearing jeans and a gray sweatshirt, his hair flattened on one side as though he had been lying down. He walked past me in the hall, went directly to the den, and sat in Paul's chair. I stayed in the doorway. "Do you want tea?" "No." "Coffee?" "No." A series of increasingly desperate beverages? He looked up. "Can you just sit?" I sat on the small couch opposite him. Paul's desk lamp cast a yellow circle over a stack of unopened mail. Tessa had fixed the jammed drawer months earlier, but no one had put the screwdriver away. It still lay beside the blotter. Daniel leaned back and closed his eyes. "You and Tessa have a fight?" I asked. "We're married. We have discussions now." "That bad? She thinks I don't tell her things. Where would she get that idea?" He opened his eyes. "Can you not? You came here. I know." He glanced toward the bookshelf, then the desk. "Do you still have that recording of Dad telling the motel story?" I knew the one. At Janice's 60th birthday dinner, Paul had told the story of a motel in North Carolina where a duck had wandered into their room through an open patio door. Paul's version lasted 11 minutes and involved 3 characters who did not need to be there. Ruth had once asked why I kept so many recordings. I told her because nobody thinks a voice is temporary while they can still hear it in the next room. "Yes," I said. "Can I have it?" "It's on my computer. Could you send it to me?" I studied him. "Why?" "I want to hear it. Does Tessa know you came here?" His gaze moved away. "Daniel, she thinks I went for a drive. Does she know you want the recording?" "No." I stood. "Where are you going?" "To bed. Mom, it takes 30 seconds to send a file. I'm not sending it." He stared at me. "Why?" "Because I won't help you hide this from your wife. It's a recording of my father." "Yes." "You're seriously withholding Dad from me now?" "Your father is not a file I control. Then send it. Tell Tessa you want it." Why does everything have to be a declaration with you? I almost laughed. With me? I miss him. I want to hear his voice. Why can't that be private? It can be private. It cannot be another secret you ask me to carry while you tell your wife I'm the one who can't move forward. I never said that. At brunch, you told everyone the wedding brought up my feelings about Paul. Janice's undercover work had been useful after all. Daniel stood. Who told you? That isn't important. Was it Aunt Janice? You are changing the subject. He dragged both hands through his hair. I didn't know what else to say. You could have said you hurt me. I didn't want to discuss our business at a restaurant. You discussed my grief. He looked toward the desk again. I just wanted to hear him tonight, he said. The anger left his voice, and there he was, my son, tired and frightened and missing his father. It would have been so easy. Open the computer, find the recording, press send, let him sit in Paul's chair and listen. Ask no questions. Make the room safe enough for him to return to a marriage where this part of him apparently had no name. The recording will still be here, I said, when you can ask for it without making me your accomplice. His face closed. You're enjoying this? No. You finally have something I want. I have always had things you wanted. Food, keys, a place to land. I just never made you ask honestly. He walked past me without another word. At the front door, he stopped as if he might turn around. He didn't. After his car disappeared, I went back to the den and opened my laptop. The recording was where I remembered, labeled Janice 60 Dinner. I did not play it. Instead, I took the New Mexico brochure from my purse and opened the application website. The first question was easy, name. The second asked for my current position. I typed program coordinator, then deleted it and wrote community arts coordinator, which sounded more important without becoming untrue. The third asked why I was interested in a month-long residency in New Mexico. I stared at the blank box. Because my son lied about cufflinks at his wedding did not seem professionally relevant. Because I am tired of being available sounded hostile. Because I can be gone now was worse. I closed the laptop without saving anything. In the morning, the website remembered my name and forgot everything else. I considered that efficient. At work, Celia caught me reading the brochure beside the copier. You opened it, she said. I was checking for spelling errors. Find any? They use the phrase transformative community engagement. That should be illegal. What would I actually be doing? Her face changed so quickly I held up a hand. Do not become enthusiastic. It's frightening. She lowered her voice. 4 visiting artists, 3 community studios, evening workshops twice a week. You'd handle registrations, supplies, scheduling, and the inevitable person who signs up for ceramics while insisting she does not want to touch clay. Why wouldn't she want to touch clay? You have met the public. True. They provide housing. You'd have weekends free. That detail landed strangely. What would I do with free weekends in New Mexico? Anything you want. People said those words as if they were a gift. Anything you want. I could not remember the last time I had planned a Sunday without first considering who might be hungry. Celia leaned against the copier. You don't have to apply. You've asked me 3 times. I've suggested it twice and am now applying gentle pressure. This is gentle? You haven't seen pressure. I folded the brochure and slipped it into my bag. Ruth agreed to be a reference before I asked. I can see the future, she said. You saw a brochure sticking out of my purse. The future has props. I haven't decided. Of course not. I may not go. Then I'll lie less enthusiastically when they call. The application stayed open on my computer for 4 days. Each night, I filled in one more section. I listed the adult painting classes I had helped expand, the weekend pottery workshops, the neighborhood mural project that had survived rain, budget cuts, and a man named Earl who believed all blue paint was interchangeable. The question about why I wanted to go remained blank. Daniel did not call. Tessa did. Her name appeared on my phone Thursday afternoon while I was helping Ruth unpack paintbrushes. I let it ring twice before answering. Hello? Elaine, are you at work? Yes. Can you talk?" I looked at Ruth. She pointed toward the hallway and mouthed, "Go." I took the call into the empty printmaking room. The air smelled of ink and citrus cleaner. "What's wrong?" I asked. A small silence followed. "Did Daniel come to your house Wednesday night?" I sat on the edge of a work table. "You need to ask Daniel." I did. "What did he say?" "He said he went driving. I watched dust move through a stripe of sunlight near the windows. He came to my house." Tessa breathed out. It was not surprise. It was confirmation. "What time did he leave?" "I don't know. 10:30 maybe. He got home after midnight. He wasn't with me that long." "Did he say where he was going?" "No." "What did he want?" "That is something he should tell you. So you won't." "I won't have a conversation about him as if he isn't responsible for explaining himself." Her voice sharpened. "You had no problem having conversations with him that I didn't know about. That's fair." She went quiet. I heard a cabinet close on her end, then running water. "I'm not accusing you of anything," she said. "You are. You're simply trying to be accurate. Does he do this often? Come to my house? Come to your house after we argue and not tell me?" I thought of evenings Daniel had arrived carrying beer or bakery boxes. Times he had sat in the den and asked me to tell him about Paul's first job, Paul's worst haircut, Paul getting lost in Philadelphia while insisting the hotel had moved. I had rarely asked what happened before he came. "More often than I understood," I said. Tessa gave a short laugh. "That's an interesting choice of word. You're allowed that one. I don't want words, Elaine. I want to know why my husband leaves our house after an argument and goes to sit in yours. What were you arguing about? Does it matter? It might. He keeps saying I don't let him talk about his father." "Do you?" "Yes." The answer came too quickly, and she knew it. "I don't know," she said. "I thought I did." I ran my thumb along a dried ridge of ink on the table. "Tessa, I'm not your marriage counselor." "I know. And I'm not going to tell you things Daniel has said to me in private. Even if he lies about being there, I told you he was there. But you won't tell me why. I told him I would not carry another secret for him. I mean that in both directions." She turned off the water. "When we first started dating," she said, "he used to talk about Paul all the time. He told me how funny he was, how he could fix anything, how everyone listened when he walked into a room. Then the first time I disagreed with one of those stories, Daniel shut down." "What did you disagree with?" "He said his father always knew when to apologize." I smiled before I could help it. "Paul once went 6 days without speaking to me because I said his chili tasted like warm ketchup." "That's what I mean. He apologized on the 7th day. For the chili? For not speaking. He defended the chili until he died." Tessa laughed, and the sound was so unexpected that I laughed too. It lasted only a moment. "I said something like that," she continued. "I said maybe Daniel remembered the best parts because he missed him. Daniel acted like I had insulted a saint. Paul was not a saint. I know that. I wish Daniel did." The sentence bothered me because there was truth in it. When Daniel came to my house missing his father, I gave him the stories he wanted. Paul dancing badly at Janice's wedding, Paul driving through a snowstorm to help him move, Paul standing in the rain to change a flat tire, while Daniel held an umbrella over himself. I did not usually tell the story of Paul forgetting our anniversary and buying flowers at a gas station. I did not remind Daniel of the winter his father barely spoke because the business where he worked had cut his hours and shame had made him mean. Daniel had been there, but grief edited. After we got engaged, Tessa said, every disagreement somehow ended with him at your house. Then he'd come home calm and tell me he didn't want to fight anymore. I thought you were telling him I was wrong. I wasn't. What were you telling him? Usually nothing. He sat in the den with his father's things. Yes. And you never asked why he was there? Sometimes. What did he say? That he missed Paul. Tessa sighed. He always misses Paul when he doesn't want to talk to me. I stood and walked to the window. In the courtyard, a woman from the watercolor class was smoking beside a no smoking sign. I made it easy for him, I said. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I'm not blaming you for what he does. You blame me at the ceremony. There it was. Neither of us moved away from it. I thought you were the one bringing the past into everything, she said. I thought he was trying to move forward, and you kept pulling him back. And now? Now I think he hands it to you so he doesn't have to carry it home. My grip tightened around the phone. He wanted something Wednesday, she said, didn't he? Yes. Something of Paul's? Yes. Did you give it to him? No. Why not? Because he didn't want you to know. Silence stretched between us. What was it? She asked. Ask your husband. I will. She ended the call without saying goodbye. Ruth was waiting outside the printmaking room with 2 paintbrushes tucked behind one ear. You look like someone rearranged your furniture, she said. They may have. Want coffee? No. Questions? No. Experimental screaming? Possibly. That evening, Daniel called before I had taken off my coat. What did you say to Tessa? Hello to you, too. Did you tell her I came over? Yes. You said you didn't want to be in the middle. I don't. That's why I'm not lying for you. You could have said she needed to ask me. I did. But you still told her. She asked me a direct question. He was breathing hard, as if he had called from outside. You had no right to say you were in my house, to get involved in our argument. You involved me when you came here and told her you were driving. I never said I was alone. I sat down at the kitchen table. Are you listening to yourself? She thinks I ran to you because I can't handle conflict. Didn't you? No, I came because I miss Dad. Those things may not be as separate as you think. He went silent. I could almost feel him reaching for the next exit. What did she ask you for? I said. What? What truth did Tessa ask you for before you came here? That's none of your business. You're right. My agreement confused him. I continued. Your marriage is not my business. Your lie about being in my home is... I didn't lie. You left out the part that mattered. That's rich. What is that supposed to mean? You're acting like you've never left anything out. You spent years protecting Dad's image. The words struck cleanly. I looked toward the den. What image? You think I didn't know when you two fought? You think I didn't hear him sleeping downstairs? That was our marriage. Exactly. But now you tell all the funny stories and make him into this perfect husband. I have never called him perfect. You don't have to. His voice broke on the last word. The anger in me shifted, not gone, but forced to share space with something else. Daniel, I said, I have to go. Tell Tessa what you wanted. He hung up. I remained at the kitchen table until the room went dark around me. Then I opened my laptop and returned to the unfinished application. Why are you interested in this residency? I typed. Because I have spent much of my adult life creating spaces where other people could arrive, make something, and feel supported. I want to learn who I am in a place where no one already knows what to ask of me. It sounded grander than I felt, but it was true. I read it once, corrected a comma, and pressed submit. The confirmation page thanked me for my interest and informed me that selected applicants would be contacted for interviews. I immediately looked for a button that would let me take the application back. There wasn't one. I closed the laptop, reopened it, and checked my email. The confirmation had arrived there, too, as if the organization suspected I might pretend the whole thing had happened in a dream. At 11:30, Ruth texted, "Did you do it?" I wrote, "Go to sleep." She replied with 6 cactus symbols and 1 airplane. The next morning, Celia walked into the office holding a paper cup and trying not to smile. "You applied. You're my supervisor. You aren't supposed to celebrate potential abandonment. I'm celebrating administrative courage. You mean you got the reference request? I've already completed it." "What did you say?" "That you're organized, calm under pressure, and able to explain a supply budget to people who believe money is a negative energy." That was 1 artist. It was 3 artists. They travel in groups. I logged into the registration system and pretended to concentrate. Celia rested her cup beside my keyboard. "If they offer it, will you go?" They haven't offered. That wasn't my question. I've had enough direct questions lately. She picked up her coffee. Fair. The problem with applying for something was that life continued while you waited. Dirty dishes did not become symbolic. The furnace still made a scraping sound at 2 a.m. A dentist's office called to move my appointment. Nothing in my house appeared to understand that I had done something unusual. The den bothered me most. I had started noticing how dark it was. Paul liked the heavy curtains because afternoon light reflected off his computer screen. I had left them closed after he died, though the computer was gone. His desk faced the wall. His leather chair sat angled toward it, as if he might return and resume a conversation with the furniture. On Saturday, I opened both curtains. Dust rose in the sunlight. "That's disgusting," I said to the room. I brought in the vacuum, a bucket of soapy water, and 2 cardboard boxes. One box was labeled Keep. The other was labeled Decide Later, which was simply Keep with less confidence. I had cleared one shelf when Janice arrived without knocking. She stood in the doorway holding a grocery bag. "Are you moving?" "No." "Are you dying?" "Not today." "Then why is the front door unlocked?" "You have a key. Locking it would not stop you." She stepped over the vacuum cord and looked around. "What are you doing to Paul's room?" "It's not Paul's room. It's the den. You've called it Paul's den for 30 years. Then I'm expanding my vocabulary." Janice set the bag on the desk. Inside were 2 deli sandwiches and a container of potato salad. "You brought food?" "I assumed you'd forget. I am fully capable of feeding myself. Your burned toast has become family history. You told people?" "Only Gerald. Gerald counts as people." She took a stack of old magazines from my hands and flipped through them. "These are from 2018. Throw them away." "All of them?" "Yes." She put them into Decide Later. That is not throwing away. I'm easing them toward death. I moved the magazines to the Keep box just to annoy her, then moved them to the trash when she turned around. For an hour, we worked without discussing Daniel. Janice dusted the shelves and narrated every object she touched. "Paul stole this ashtray from a hotel. He did not smoke. He liked the horse on it. Put it in the box. This photograph makes my hair look enormous. Your hair was enormous. It was fashionable. It required its own seatbelt." She laughed and slipped the photograph into Keep. When we reached the desk, she pulled open the drawer Tessa had repaired. It slid smoothly. "At least the bride is handy," Janice said. "Don't call her the bride. She was recently a bride. She has a name." Janice looked at me. "You're defending her?" "I'm defending nouns." She removed a tray of paper clips, dead batteries, and old receipts. Beneath it lay a small screwdriver. "Tessa left that," I said. "Then mail it to her with a note about widows hoarding tools." "Janice." "I'm joking." "No, you're volunteering to keep the fight alive because it makes you feel useful." The words came out sharper than I intended. Janice set down the screwdriver. "I'm on your side. I did not ask anyone to choose a side. There are already sides. Then stand somewhere else." She stared at me, hurt settling across her face before anger could cover it. "I brought you lunch." "I know. I came because you've spent 3 Sundays alone proving some kind of point. I went to a play last Sunday. A bad play. It was terrible. I had a wonderful time." Janice crossed her arms. "You think doing everything alone makes you strong. That is not what I think. It's what you've always thought." I opened my mouth, but she continued. "Paul used to complain that you never let anyone help until you were furious and no one had helped." The room seemed to narrow around us. "When did he say that?" "Repeatedly." "To you?" "I was his sister. I was his wife. Which is why he could complain to me." I picked up the screwdriver and turned it between my fingers. Janice's voice softened. "He loved that you held everything together. He also worried you'd hold so tightly the rest of us would forget how. That sounds very polished for Paul. He said you were training Daniel to think food appeared when he opened the refrigerator. That sounds like him." "He wasn't wrong." "No." She touched the back of the leather chair. Neither are you now. We ate the sandwiches sitting on the floor because the desk chair was buried under files. Janice took the larger half of the potato salad and denied it when I pointed it out. Before she left, she helped me turn Paul's desk so it faced the window. The movement exposed a pale rectangle on the rug where it had stood for years. The room looked wrong. It also looked larger. On Monday, Tessa appeared at the art center just before closing. She stood in the lobby beneath a mobile made from wire and painted tin. Every time the heat came on, a red metal bird spun above her head. "I called," she said. "My phone is in the office. I can come back. You're already here." She wore the same red coat from the honeymoon photograph. Her hair was pulled into a low knot, and she looked as though she had not slept well. I locked the front door and led her into the pottery studio. The tables were streaked with dried clay. Half-finished bowls rested beneath plastic on the shelves. "You want coffee?" I asked. "No." "Thank you. Tea?" "No." A series of increasingly desperate beverages. Her expression shifted. "Daniel says that he stole it from me." She sat on a stool. I remained standing until that felt theatrical, then took the stool across from her. "He told me about the recording," she said. "All right. He says you won't send it because of me. That isn't why. He says you want him to make some kind of statement first. I want him to stop asking me to keep his grief secret from you. He told me. It isn't secret now. Did he tell you why he wanted it that night? He missed his father. That's what he told me." Tessa looked at the shelves behind my shoulder. "We were arguing about the wedding." "Which part?" "Your part." I waited. "He said I had apologized and you were still withholding Sunday dinners to make us feel guilty." "I am not withholding meals. Restaurants continue to operate." "I know. Does Daniel? He feels like you cut him off. He has my phone number. He thinks every conversation becomes a test. Did he mention calling me a thief because I wouldn't send the recording? He said you were using Paul to control him." The words hurt even though I had heard their outline before. "Do you believe that?" I asked. "I don't know. Then why are you here? I want you to send it." I looked at her. "If he hears the recording," she said, "maybe this can stop being a battle. You came here without telling him, didn't you?" Color rose in her face. "That's different. It always feels different when we're the one keeping the secret." She stood, walked to a table, and pressed one fingertip against a lump of dried clay. "I don't know how to do this," she said. "Do what?" "Be married to someone who has a whole room in his life I'm not allowed to enter. The den is not locked. You know what I mean." I think I do. Whenever Paul comes up, Daniel either turns him into the greatest man who ever lived or shuts down completely. There's no middle. "And you," she stopped. "And I what?" "You keep all of it here. His chair, his desk, his voice. Daniel comes here and gets whatever version of his father he needs, then comes home and treats me like I'm cruel for asking him to live with me. I have never told Daniel not to live with you. You make it possible for him not to tell me things. I did." The answer caught her off guard. "I agreed to carry the cufflinks in secret," I continued. "I let him come here without asking enough questions. I thought I was giving him a safe place. You were. That is not always the same as giving him a good one." Tessa looked down at the clay on her fingertip. "My mother could turn any dinner into a funeral," she said. "Birthdays, anniversaries, Thanksgiving. She would bring up the people who weren't there, the house we used to have, the years when everybody was happier. If someone told her to stop, she said we wanted her to erase her life. Lorraine's careful cheerfulness took on a different shape in my mind. So when you saw the cufflinks, I said, you saw all of that. I saw the first brick in a wall I'd already spent years climbing, and you threw it at me. Yes, there was no defense in the word. I rested my hands on my knees. Your marriage is yours. Paul is part of Daniel, whether either of you likes the way he carries him. I will not help Daniel deny that, and I will not let you shame me for surviving my husband." Tessa nodded once. Then she asked, "What's the motel story?" I pictured Paul at Janice's birthday dinner, already laughing before he reached the part about the duck. It's 11 minutes long, I said. 4 of those minutes are unnecessary. Was there really a duck? There was a duck. The motel may have been innocent. She almost smiled. I did not send the recording. But when she left, she took the small screwdriver from Paul's desk, which had been hers all along. Tessa sent me a message 20 minutes later. Thank you for talking to me. Then another. I'm going to tell Daniel I came. I wrote, good. A third message appeared. That sounded like a command. I answered. It was encouragement in my regular voice. She sent back a single laughing face. I was still looking at it when Ruth leaned through the office doorway. Was that the bride? Don't call her the bride. Interesting. You only correct people you plan to keep. I correct you constantly, and yet here I am. Daniel called the next evening. He did not sound angry at first. That was how I knew he was furious. I heard Tessa visited you. She did, at work. Yes. What did you two talk about? She told you she came, but not why. She said she wanted to understand what happened the other night. That's why. He waited. I waited longer. Did you tell her I used Dad to avoid conflict? He asked. No. She says you agreed with her. I agreed that I have made it easy for you to come to my house and leave important things unsaid. That's the same thing. No, it includes me. I'm glad you both had such a productive discussion about my flaws. I looked at the clock on the wall. The second hand moved in small, determined jerks. She asked whether you came to my house, I said. I answered. She asked why. I told her to ask you, and then you discussed the recording. She already knew. Because I told her. Good. Stop saying good like you're handing out grades. What would you like me to say? I'd like you to stay out of my marriage. So would I. You met with my wife behind my back. She came to my workplace. You could have sent her home. She is an adult. So am I. I'm your son. That does not make other adults disappear. His breath came out hard against the phone. She thinks I've been using you as some kind of emotional escape hatch, he said. I thought of his face in the wedding photograph, smiling at the camera while I asked a question he would not answer. What do you think? I asked. I think I lost my father. Yes. And sometimes I want to be around someone who knew him. Yes. Why does that have to mean something is wrong with me? It doesn't. Then why are you treating it like evidence? I'm not. I am asking why you need Tessa to believe your grief belongs to me. I never said that. You did at the brunch. I was trying to explain why you weren't there. You could have explained what happened. And humiliate Tessa in front of her family? The answer came so quickly that neither of us could pretend it was accidental. So humiliating me was easier, I said. That isn't what I meant. It is exactly what you meant. No, Mom. I mean, you've been through things. People understand that. What things? Dad dying. I pressed my hand against the table. And people wouldn't understand that you lied to your wife? I didn't lie. You are still saying that because I didn't. I panicked. I said you misunderstood. What did I misunderstand? He fell silent. The question had waited since the side room at the inn. He still had no answer that did not require the truth. I don't know what you want from me, he said. Not brunch. That's funny. It wasn't a joke. Tessa apologized. I told her about the recording. What else am I supposed to do? You have not apologized. For what? My laugh startled both of us. He continued before I could speak. You want me to kneel down and confess that I'm a terrible son. I want you to be able to name what you did without turning my reaction into the real offense. You cut off the whole family. I stopped cooking on Sundays. You know it's more than that. Then maybe the family was built on something too fragile. You like this. The accusation was quiet. What do I like? Being the injured one. Finally, everybody has to notice what you do for them because you stopped doing it. I wanted to reject the sentence completely. Instead, Janice's voice returned. Paul used to complain that you never let anyone help until you were furious no one had helped. I may like not being taken for granted, I said. There, that's what this is about. That does not mean I like losing you. You haven't lost me. No? He did not answer. I looked through the doorway toward the den. Afternoon light stretched across the rug where the desk used to stand. I am not asking you to stop missing your father, I said. I am asking you to miss him honestly. You don't own honesty. No, that's why there's enough for both of us. That sounds like something you practiced. I'm not as quick as I look. He gave a bitter little laugh. Do you want the recording now? I asked. His pause was brief but unmistakable. No, Tessa knows. I said I don't want it. All right, you made it into a symbol. You made it a secret, and now I don't want it. He ended the call. The following morning, an email arrived inviting me to a video interview. Ruth read it over my shoulder. Next Tuesday, she said, we need to fix your background. My background is 63 years. We don't have time. The camera background. The desk now faced the window, which meant the laptop camera showed a wall with 2 empty picture hooks and a section of darker paint where a framed print had hung for 20 years. Ruth came to my house Monday evening carrying a lamp, a potted plant, and opinions. The leather chair should go there, she said, pointing toward the far corner. Paul's chair stays where it is. It blocks the bookshelf. It has blocked the bookshelf since 2004. Then it has had a good run. We compromised by turning the chair toward the window. I moved the old floor lamp beside it and placed Paul's fishing mug on a lower shelf, where it held 3 pens and a pair of scissors. The desk became mine without anyone announcing it. For the video interview, Ruth sat in my hallway where the camera could not see her and silently acted out instructions. Smile. Sit up. Stop touching your hair. At one point, she pointed urgently toward her mouth, and I spent 30 seconds wondering whether I had lipstick on my teeth before realizing she wanted me to speak louder. The interviewers were 2 women named Elena and Margot. They asked what I would do if a visiting artist refused to follow the posted studio schedule. Find out whether the schedule is the problem or the artist is, I said. Margot smiled, and if it's the artist, offer 2 solutions and a deadline. Creative people need boundaries just as much as they need flexibility. They simply prefer prettier words. Elena laughed. They asked how I handled conflict between community participants. I try not to solve disagreements people are capable of solving themselves. Ruth's eyebrows rose in the hallway. What if they expect you to? Margot asked. I'm learning that being useful and being responsible are not always the same thing. That answer was not rehearsed. When the interview ended, Ruth walked into the den. You were magnificent. I spoke for 26 minutes without standing up. Exactly. They may not choose me. Then we'll insult New Mexico for a week and move on. You like New Mexico. I contain multitudes. The offer arrived 9 days later. I read it 3 times at my desk. The residency would begin in 5 weeks. Housing was a small, furnished apartment near the studios. Travel was covered. They wanted an answer within 4 days. My first feeling was joy. My second was terror. My third was an urgent need to check Daniel's calendar, though I had no reason to know what he was doing 5 weeks from now. I accepted before the third feeling could win. Then I called Janice. You're going where? She demanded. New Mexico. Alone? No, I'm taking a marching band. Don't be smart. For how long? 1 month. What about the house? It will remain here. What about your plants? You can water them. I kill plants. Gerald can water them. Gerald resents plants. He says they're smug about sunlight. I'll ask Ruth. Janice was quiet. You're really going, she said. Yes, Paul would be proud of you. The words irritated me. Paul does not get a vote. I said proud, not consulted. I know. He would still be proud. I know. I called Daniel next. He answered on the 4th ring. Hey, I have news. What happened? Nothing happened. I was offered a temporary position with an arts residency in New Mexico. A what? I explained. For a few seconds, all I heard was traffic. When? He asked. 5 weeks from Monday. For how long? 1 month. You applied for this? Yes. When? Recently. Before or after the wedding? After. He laughed once. Of course. What does that mean? It means this is part of the same thing. What thing? You proving you don't need anybody. I am going to work for a month, not entering witness protection. Who's taking care of the house? The house does not require emotional supervision. What if something breaks? I'll call someone. From New Mexico. Telephones work across state lines. He was quiet again. Are you coming by Sunday? He asked. The question caught me off guard. For what? Tessa and I were thinking of having dinner. At your place? Yes. You're inviting me? That's generally what coming by means. I heard Tessa say something in the background. Is she there? I asked. She's driving. You're on speaker? No. Tessa's voice came closer. Yes, he is. I smiled despite myself. Congratulations, Elaine, she said. That sounds wonderful. Daniel said, We don't know anything about it. We know she wants to go, Tessa replied. You don't think it's strange timing? No. Seriously? She stopped hosting Sunday dinner and applied for a job. Those are activities, not threats. I didn't call it a threat. You called it part of the same thing. I'm on the phone with my mother, and your mother can hear me. I can, I said. Daniel took me off speaker. The sudden quiet made my ear ring. So Sunday? He asked. I'll come. 6? 6 is fine. He hesitated. Are you going to tell everybody at dinner? He asked. Who is everybody? Just us. The word us felt both small and important. I already told Janice, obviously. She took it well. Did she ask about the house? Immediately. That's because it's a reasonable question. I'm not leaving it to the wolves, Daniel. I know. He sounded tired rather than angry now. Congratulations, he said. Thank you. When the call ended, I sat in the Brighton den with my hands flat on the desk. Paul's chair faced the window. Dust floated through the late light above it. For the first time since I had turned the desk, the room did not look wrong. It looked unfinished. I thought I could live with that. Daniel and Tessa lived in a third-floor apartment with narrow windows and a front door that stuck, unless you pulled it towards you while turning the key. Daniel had explained the trick at least 6 times, as though I regularly entered their home without them. On Sunday, he opened the door before I knocked. You're early. It's 5:58. We said 6. I apologize for the ambush. His face tightened. That was a joke, I said. I know. It clearly had not been a successful one. Their apartment smelled of garlic and something sweet. A wooden board on the kitchen counter held cheese, crackers, grapes, and small bowls of olives. Tessa was at the stove stirring a pot. You made appetizers? I asked. We didn't know what time you'd eat. 6, apparently. She smiled over her shoulder. Wine? Yes. Daniel took my coat and hung it in the hall closet. 3 empty hangers fell to the floor. He muttered under his breath and wrestled them back onto the rail. Everything all right? I asked. Fine. Tessa handed me a glass of red wine. He tried to reorganize the closet, she said. I improved it. You removed everything and then discovered the closet was too small to put it back. That's the first step in organizing. No, that's the first step in moving. They looked at each other. Tessa's mouth twitched. The apartment was comfortable without being precious. Tessa's clean lines had been interrupted by Daniel's books, shoes, and habit of leaving charging cords wherever they fell. One wall held framed photographs from trips they had taken together. A wedding picture had already joined them. It was the one beneath the white flowers, Daniel and Tessa facing each other after their vows. There were no photographs from before they met. Daniel noticed me looking. We're waiting for the rest from the photographer, he said. It's a beautiful picture. Tessa chose it. We both chose it, she said. He gave a small shrug and carried the cheese board to the coffee table. We sat in the living room. Daniel asked about New Mexico as if conducting a job interview. What's the neighborhood like? I've only seen photographs. Who else is staying in the building? I don't know. Does the apartment have laundry? Yes. On-site? I believe so. You should confirm. If not, I will wash my clothes in the Rio Grande. Tessa ate an olive. He looked up crime statistics. I looked up the area. You looked up whether she could be mugged between the studio and the grocery store. I was being responsible. You are not responsible for me, I said. I know that. He answered too fast. I took a cracker. You can check the house while I'm gone if you want? His posture changed. I thought Ruth was doing it. She's watering the plants. You can make sure the furnace hasn't exploded. Furnaces don't explode. Then it should be easy. Do you want me to pick up the mail? I'm having it held. Trash cans? I will not be producing trash from New Mexico. Tessa covered a laugh with her wine glass. Daniel looked between us. I'm glad everybody's enjoying this. I'm accepting your offer to help, I said. You made it sound ridiculous. Because we were negotiating the care of an empty building. It's your house. Yes, it matters to me. That quieted me. I know, I said. Dinner was chicken with lemon, roasted potatoes, and green beans. Tessa apologized because the chicken had taken 20 minutes longer than the recipe promised. Recipes lie about chicken, I told her. Why? To get you started. If they told the truth, nobody would cook. Daniel cut into his piece. Mom once made a turkey that took 14 hours. It was 26 pounds. It was still frozen at midnight. The outside was cooked. The inside had weather. Tessa laughed so suddenly she nearly spilled her wine. That was one Thanksgiving, I said. You put a towel over it and cried in the pantry. I did not cry. You absolutely cried. I was cutting onions. In the pantry, I needed privacy. Daniel's imitation of me was terrible. His shoulders hunched, his mouth pinched into a line, and he pretended to dab his eyes with a dish towel. I laughed until I had to put down my fork. For a few minutes, we were simply ourselves. Then Tessa said, "Was Paul there?" The laughter did not stop so much as lose its footing. "Yes," I said. "He ordered pizza." Daniel smiled at his plate. "He told everyone it was part of my menu," I continued. "That sounds like him," Daniel said. Tessa waited, but he did not add anything. After dinner, she brought coffee to the living room. Daniel started collecting plates even though she told him to leave them. "Sit down," she said. "I'm cleaning. You're moving dishes 6 feet. That's where the sink is." "Daniel." He set down the plates. Tessa looked at me. We talked about the recording. Daniel remained standing. "I didn't come for that," I said. "I know," she replied. "But we've been talking. Apparently everybody talks except me," Daniel said. "We are trying to talk to you now." "No, you're arranging a conversation." Tessa's jaw tightened. "Fine. Arrange your own." He walked into the kitchen and turned on the faucet. I took a sip of coffee. It was too hot. Tessa looked tired again. "I thought we could settle this." "You cannot settle Daniel by putting 2 women on a couch and pointing him toward honesty. He says you won't send it unless he asks the right way." I said I won't help him keep it secret. "It isn't secret. That part has improved." From the kitchen, Daniel said, "Can you not discuss me like I'm in another state?" "You chose the sink," Tessa called back. A plate struck the metal basin harder than necessary. I set down my cup. "I should go." "No," they said together. "That would have been funny on a different night." Daniel came back into the room, drying his hands on a towel. "I don't want the recording anymore," he said. Tessa looked at him. "You played 15 seconds of it on your phone from an old video and cried in the bathroom." His face changed. She closed her eyes. "I'm sorry." "I shouldn't have said that." "No, you shouldn't have. I'm trying to tell you it's okay. You told my mother. I told your mother, because you keep making everything a secret and then blaming us for noticing." He looked at me. "This is what you wanted. Everybody discussing how broken I am because my father died. I do not think you're broken. You told Tessa I use him to escape. I did not. You both keep saying you didn't say the exact words as if that makes it better." I stood. "You're right," I said. "Neither of them expected that." I continued. I have been so focused on making you admit what happened that I turned the recording into another test. I'm sorry. Daniel's grip loosened on the dish towel. I will send it tonight if you still want it, I said. But I will not tell Tessa you asked if you didn't, and I will not tell you she approves if she doesn't. You two can do that part yourselves. I don't need her approval to hear Dad. No, Tessa said. You don't. Then why has this become a summit meeting? Because you lied about wanting his cufflinks, she said. There it is. It hasn't gone away because you refused to say it. I said I handled it badly. You said your mother misunderstood. He turned toward me. Are we ever going to stop circling that sentence? When you tell me what I misunderstood, I said. His face went still. I picked up my handbag. Tessa rose. Elaine, please don't leave like this. I'm not storming out. I ate the chicken. I laughed. I am leaving because this is your marriage, and I will not sit between you while you argue about whether I belong there. Daniel looked down at the towel in his hands. At the door, he helped me with my coat. The gesture was stiff and familiar. You'll send the recording, he asked, if you want it. He glanced toward the living room. I'll let you know. I kissed his cheek. He did not pull away, but he did not turn his face toward me either. The 5 weeks before my departure filled themselves. I trained a temporary replacement at the arts center, cleaned my refrigerator, made lists for Ruth, then threw away half the lists because she threatened to stop watering my plants out of spite. Celia organized a farewell lunch at a Mexican restaurant. New Mexico is not Mexico, I told her. The Italian place was booked. Ruth gave me a travel-size sewing kit, 3 pairs of matching earrings, and a mug that said World's Best Grandma. I'm not a grandmother, I said. Neither am I. It builds confidence. Janice arrived at my house the night before I left, carrying enough food for a train crossing. I'm flying, I reminded her. Planes can be delayed, not for 6 days. You don't know that. She inspected my suitcase, removed 2 sweaters, added a 3rd pair of shoes, then put the sweaters back. You are making it heavier. I'm giving you options. At midnight, after she left, the house became too quiet. My suitcase stood near the front door. The den was clean. The desk held my laptop, a new lamp, and a calendar with the residency dates circled in red. Paul's chair faced the window. I sat in it. The leather gave beneath me in the exact way I remembered. For years, sitting there had felt like borrowing his body. That night, it felt like sitting in a chair. Daniel and Tessa picked me up in the morning. Tessa brought coffee and a paper bag of breakfast sandwiches. Daniel loaded my suitcase into their trunk, lifted it once, and stared at me. What did Aunt Janice put in here? Fear. That tracks. Traffic toward the airport was slow. Tessa drove. Daniel sat beside me in the back seat because my suitcase occupied half the trunk and, according to him, changed the weight distribution of the car. That is not how sedans work, Tessa said. I'm being considerate. You wanted to sit with your mother. I can do 2 things. Daniel checked my boarding pass, gate number, and identification. When he asked whether I had my phone charger for the 3rd time, I told him New Mexico sold electricity. At the terminal, Tessa hugged me first. I hope it's everything you want, she said. I don't know what I want. Then I hope it surprises you. Daniel took longer. His arms tightened around me, and for one dangerous second, I wanted to cancel the flight, go home and make Sunday dinner until neither of us had to change. You don't have to prove anything, he said against my hair. I'm not. He stepped back. Call when you land. I will. And if the apartment is strange, all apartments are strange until you know where they keep the spoons. Tessa touched his arm. Let her go. I walked into the terminal without turning around until I reached security. They were still standing together near the doors. Daniel had one hand in his pocket. Tessa's head rested briefly against his shoulder. I raised my hand. They waved back. The apartment in New Mexico was on the 2nd floor of a pale stucco building with blue trim. It had 1 bedroom, a narrow balcony, and a kitchen drawer containing 17 forks but no bottle opener. The first 3 days were chaos. One visiting sculptor's materials arrived at the wrong studio. The registration system lost 22 names. A watercolor instructor objected to sharing sink space with the ceramics group because clay dust, she informed me, carried an aggressive energy. I slept heavily and woke before sunrise. On Sunday, I walked to an outdoor market by myself. I bought roasted peppers, bread, and 4 loose carrots. A musician played guitar near a fountain. Nobody knew I was a widow. Nobody expected me to feed them. Nobody cared where I had been the previous Sunday. The freedom was not pure. It had loneliness mixed through it like grit. My phone rang while I sat on a low wall eating a pastry. Daniel. "Hey," he said. "Hey, Tessa's here." A rustle followed, then her voice. "Hi, Elaine. You have me on speaker?" "Yes," Daniel said, "with consent. That's progress." He cleared his throat. "We were wondering if you could send the motel recording." Tessa added, "We want to listen to it together." The market moved around me. Canvas bags, bright shirts, dogs pulling toward food stalls, sunlight on the fountain. "Are you sure?" I asked. "No," Daniel said. "But send it." "Please," Tessa added. I smiled. "All right." I found the file on my phone. Janice 60 dinner. 11 minutes of Paul's voice, 4 of them unnecessary. Before I pressed to send, Daniel said, "Mom? Yes?" I did ask for the cufflinks. I closed my eyes. "I know," I said. "I know you know." It was not yet an apology, but it was the first time he had told the truth where Tessa could hear it. I sent them their father's duck story and remained on the wall beneath the New Mexico sun. Daniel called again that evening. I was standing in the apartment kitchen, attempting to open a bottle of sparkling water with the handle of a spoon. "We listened," he said. "Was there really a duck?" Tessa called in the background. "There was really a duck. I think your husband invited it inside." He opened the patio door. "For the duck." He said the room smelled like bleach. Daniel laughed. It was not the polite sound he had made at dinner. It came from lower in his chest and caught halfway out. "I forgot the part where Dad tried to put it in the bathtub," he said. "He was worried it would get hit by a car. The motel was nowhere near a road. Your father did not let geography interfere with concern." Tessa said, "That explains some things." "Which things?" Daniel asked. "Your emergency suitcase. It's not an emergency suitcase. It contains rope. It's useful." "For what?" "Emergencies." I pressed the spoon harder against the bottle cap. It slipped and struck the counter. "What are you doing?" Daniel asked. "Nothing." That sounded like metal. "My apartment has 17 forks and no bottle opener. Use the edge of the counter. I would like my security deposit returned." Tessa said something I couldn't hear. "What?" I asked. "She says use a key," Daniel told me. "That sounds dangerous." "It isn't. I'm not taking advice from 2 people who own emergency rope." I gave up and put the bottle back in the refrigerator. Daniel grew quiet. "Mom," he said. He sounded different. "Your father?" "Yeah." "Different from what?" "From how I hear him in my head." I leaned against the counter. "How does he sound in your head?" "I don't know." "Deeper. Memory gives everyone a better voice." He kept losing track of the story. He had wine. He always lost track. "Yes," Tessa asked. "Did he know he was funny?" "Completely," I said. "That was one of his worst qualities." Daniel laughed again. We spoke for another 10 minutes. Not about the ceremony, not about Sunday dinners. They told me their upstairs neighbor had started playing trumpet in the evenings. I described the aggressive energy of clay dust. When we hung up, I realized neither of them had asked when I was coming home. I missed the question. I also appreciated its absence. At the studios the following day, a sculptor named Raphael informed me that his scheduled demonstration could not happen in the North Room because the ceiling was emotionally compressed. "The ceiling is 12 feet high," I said. "Height is not freedom." "What would freedom look like?" "The West Studio. The watercolor group is in the West Studio. They could move." The watercolor instructor, Monique, happened to enter behind him carrying a tray of brushes. "We cannot move," she said. Raphael turned. "The light is exactly the same in the North Room. Then you use the North Room. The ceiling is oppressive." Monique looked up. It's higher than this one, physically. They both turned to me. A month earlier, I would have opened the schedule, offered 3 alternatives, called someone about the ceiling, and somehow found myself moving 20 folding tables. Instead, I said, "You are both adults with access to the room calendar. Bring me one solution by 3 o'clock." Raphael blinked. "Together? That is usually how one solution works." Monique opened her mouth. 3 o'clock, I repeated. They left in opposite directions. At 2:40, they returned with a plan to exchange rooms halfway through the afternoon. It was sensible, required no additional staff, and included a shared drying table they were both unexpectedly excited about. Margot watched them leave my office. "What did you do?" "Nothing." "You look pleased." "I am." The residency gave me work I understood in a place I did not. Every morning, the mountains looked close enough to touch and then remained miles away. The air dried my skin, bread, and laundry with equal determination. I learned which grocery store sold decent coffee and which bus was 20 minutes late, even when it arrived on time. I made friends slowly. Margot invited me to dinner with her partner, Elise, who restored old textiles and could identify the decade of any stain. Raphael taught me to shape a small clay cup, though he insisted it was not a cup, but a vessel negotiating gravity. "It leaks," I said. "That is part of the negotiation." On my second Sunday, I took a bus to a trail outside the city. I walked farther than I intended, then sat on a sun-warmed rock and ate an orange, while wind moved through the dry grass. My phone chimed with a message in the family thread. Daniel had shared the motel recording. Dad telling the duck story at Aunt Janice's birthday. 11 minutes. Worth it. Janice answered first. I sound fantastic in the background. Gerald wrote, "You're yelling at him to skip ahead." Walter added 3 laughing faces. Lorraine wrote, "What a wonderful voice." Then Tessa. The duck was innocent. I listened to the first minute. Paul began with, "This is not a story about a duck," and everyone in the room immediately shouted that it was. His voice reached me across 4 years and nearly 2,000 miles. I did not break apart. I did not lose the afternoon. I sat on the rock and listened until Janice yelled, "Get to the bird, Paul." Then I put the phone away and finished my orange. Daniel checked the house every few days. The first 2 visits produced no report beyond all good. On the third, he called from the den. "You moved the desk." "Yes." "Why?" "I wanted it near the window. And Dad's chair. I turned it. I can see that." I waited. He opened and closed a drawer. The repaired one, judging by the smooth sound. "Did you get rid of stuff?" he asked. "Old magazines, dead batteries, some receipts." "What receipts?" "I don't remember." "From Dad?" "Possibly. What were they for?" "They were receipts, Daniel. Their work here was done." He exhaled. "You could have asked me." "Whether you wanted dead batteries? Whether I wanted any of his things? I did not throw away his things. You moved everything. I moved a desk and a chair. It looks different." The words came out with such naked unhappiness that I sat down on the edge of my bed. "Yes," I said, "it does. I thought you wanted us to stop acting like the past was sacred." "I never said that. You said I live backward. I said you ask me to hold your grief in secret. That's different?" "Very." He walked across the den. I could hear his footsteps through the phone. His mug is full of pens. It was full of measuring spoons before. It was by the coffee maker. For 4 years. "You drank out of it. Once. You never told me." I did not realize the mug required a family announcement. He was quiet. Then he said, "Tessa thinks I'm upset because you're changing things." "Are you?" "I don't know." "That answer is allowed. She says it's your house." "It is." "I grew up there." "Yes." "It's the only place that still feels like he might walk in." The honesty of it moved through me slowly. "I know," I said. "What if I don't want that to go away? You cannot make a room hold still forever." "I know. But you can come sit in the chair. It faces the wrong way. Turn it." He laughed softly. A week later, during a video call, I saw the chair behind him angled toward the desk again. I did not correct him. Tessa appeared over his shoulder holding a paper bag. "Tell your mother what you did," she said. Daniel looked annoyed. "Why? Because it's funny. It isn't funny." She took something from the bag and held it toward the camera. A metal bottle opener shaped like a lizard. "He mailed this to your apartment," she said. "I was being helpful. You paid overnight shipping. She needed it. The sparkling water was 3 weeks ago." Daniel reached for the phone. The picture blurred. "You weren't supposed to show her." "Why not?" "Because it was just a thing." When the camera steadied, he looked embarrassed. I went to the kitchen and opened the drawer. The lizard bottle opener had arrived that morning, wrapped in 4 layers of paper. "It works," I said. "Good, thank you." "Sure." Tessa leaned into view. "He bought one for us, too." "Ours was old," Daniel said. "We did not own one shaped like a reptile." "That's what I mean." He and Tessa looked better together. Not fixed. Better. They still interrupted each other. Tessa still watched his face when Paul's name came up, but Daniel no longer glanced away before answering. On my final week, Margot asked whether I would consider returning for another program in the spring. "I just learned where you keep the printer paper," I said. "That is not a no. I'm going home." Also not a no. The last workshop ended with clay on every table and applause for Raphael's demonstration, beneath the supposedly oppressive ceiling. Monique gave me a watercolor of the shared drying table. It was more beautiful than the table deserved. At the farewell dinner, I cried harder than I expected. The next morning, I packed the leaking clay vessel between 2 sweaters. Ruth met me at the airport wearing the world's best grandma sweatshirt she had bought to match the mug. "You're frightening the public," I told her. "The public needs mystery." She hugged me, took one look at my suitcase and said, "Janice packed this, didn't she?" She added fear. She added canned food. I found it when she came to water the plants. She came to water them? She said Gerald wanted proof they were alive. The house smelled closed when I entered, a mixture of dust, wood, and the faint citrus cleaner Ruth used on everything. My plants had survived. The furnace had not exploded. The mail waited in a neat stack on the kitchen counter. Someone had placed the blue fishing mug beside the coffee maker again. I stood looking at it. Then I carried it back to the den and returned it to the lower shelf beside my pens. The room was bright in the afternoon light. Daniel had turned Paul's chair back toward the window before I came home. There was soup in the refrigerator labeled, "Gerald made this," Janice supervised. A half-gallon of milk sat beside it, even though I had not asked anyone to buy groceries. I unpacked slowly. The New Mexico dust in the seams of my shoes looked strangely red against the bedroom rug. That evening, I expected Daniel to call. He did not. The next morning, while I was drinking coffee at my desk, the doorbell rang. Daniel stood on the porch alone. He held no bakery box, no flowers, no object that explained why he had come. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Yes." He stepped inside and wiped his shoes on the mat, though they were dry. I closed the door behind him. "Coffee?" I asked. "I'm okay." "Tea?" "No." "A series, Mom." His voice stopped me. I led him into the den. He looked around as if he had not been there a dozen times while I was gone. The desk faced the window. My leaking clay vessel sat on the shelf beside Paul's fishing mug. The leather chair was turned toward the light. "You put it back," he said. "The mug?" "The chair. You put it back." I turned it when I checked the house, and turned it again before I came home. He shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. "It looked better this way." "I agree." He sat in the chair. I returned to my desk, then decided it made me feel like a bank manager and moved to the small couch. For a while, we looked at each other. "How was the flight?" he asked. "Long." "Any delays?" 20 minutes. "That's not bad." "No." "Did your suitcase make it?" "You saw it in the hall." "Right." He looked toward the window. A squirrel ran along the fence and disappeared beneath the bare branches. "I didn't come to ask for anything," Daniel said. I noticed the absence of pastry. I almost stopped. At the bakery. Yeah. Why didn't you? Because I always bring something when I want you to be glad I came. The sentence was so precise that I did not interrupt it. He rubbed his palms over his knees. Tessa thinks I should start by saying exactly what I did. What do you think? I think she's right. He looked at me. I asked you for Dad's cufflinks. I asked you to bring them to the ceremony. I asked you not to tell Tessa because I was afraid she'd say no, and I wanted them without having the argument. I folded my hands in my lap. When she saw them, he continued, I knew she thought it was your idea. I knew I could fix that. All I had to do was tell the truth. His mouth tightened. But I was standing there in my suit, and she was already upset. We were 10 minutes away from getting married. I thought if I admitted I'd gone behind her back, everything would blow up. So you said I misunderstood. Yes. The word landed differently from I know you know. This time there was no distance around it. And when she said what she said, he continued, I let her believe she was defending us from you. I knew she was wrong. I knew you weren't trying to turn the ceremony into anything. But if I corrected her, she would be angry with me, and you thought I wouldn't be. No, he swallowed. I knew you would be. I just thought you'd take it. I looked at him. He forced himself not to look away. You've always taken it, he said. Not exactly that. But when I forgot things, when I disappointed you, when I asked too much, you got mad, and then you helped anyway. Tessa was the person I was building a life with, so I protected that relationship. You were my mother. I thought I couldn't lose you. You protected your relationship by letting her hurt me. Yes. His eyes filled, but he did not lower his head. I used you as the safe person to disappoint, he said. Outside, a truck passed on the street. Its brakes made a low grinding sound, then faded. That's a terrible thing to say, I whispered. I know. It's also true. I know. He wiped one eye with the heel of his hand. I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry I stood there and made you look confused when you were doing what I asked. I'm sorry I let Tessa say that to you and then acted like the real problem was you leaving early. I'm sorry I told everybody you were upset about Dad because it was easier than saying I had humiliated you. He took a breath that shook. And I'm sorry I called Sunday dinner punishment. You didn't owe us that. I knew how much work it was. I just liked not having to think about the work because you always did it. I glanced at the shelf. Paul's mug held 3 pens and the scissors. The chipped edge caught a thin line of sunlight. Did Tessa write this speech? I asked. Daniel laughed through his nose. No. Did she edit it? She told me to remove the part where I explained how stressed I was. That was good editing. I thought so. He leaned back in the chair. I kept trying to find a version where I wasn't the worst person in the room, he said. That's why I couldn't apologize. I thought if I admitted what I did, it meant she was right about me and you were right about me, and I was just... He stopped. A terrible son? I asked. Yeah. You have been a terrible son before. His eyes widened. You have also been a good one, I said. People are allowed range. He looked down at his hands. Your father once forgot me at a gas station, I added. What? Outside Roanoke. He went inside to pay, I got out to use the restroom, and he drove away. How far? 7 miles. Daniel stared. He never told me that. He came back. 7 miles? He said he was listening to the radio. How does the radio explain not noticing your wife was gone? It was a very interesting program. Daniel laughed. I did too, but the laughter passed quickly. I helped create this, I said. He frowned. No, I did not make you lie at your wedding. That belongs to you. Okay, but I made being needed into proof that I was loved. I taught you that I would make room no matter how you arrived. I gave you food when you needed questions. I let you sit in this chair and miss your father without asking what you were avoiding. I wasn't always avoiding something. I know. Sometimes I just missed him. I know that, too. He looked at the chair beneath him, pressing one thumb into the worn leather. I was angry when you moved the desk, he said. "You made that clear. It felt like you were getting rid of him because of me. I was making room for myself. I know that now. That distinction matters." He nodded. I let the quiet remain. For years, I had hurried to fill every silence Daniel brought into my house. I had offered coffee, stories, food, forgiveness, anything to keep him from feeling discomfort long enough to examine it. He shifted in the chair but did not run. "What happens now?" he asked. "I don't know. Are we okay?" "Not in the way you mean." His face tightened again. "I forgive you," I said, "or I am beginning to. But forgiveness does not mean I go back to being available for every meal, every argument, everything you don't want to say somewhere else. I'm not asking you to. You might." He considered that. "Probably. If you come here after a fight with Tessa, you can tell me you had a fight. I won't ask for details you don't want to give, but I won't help you pretend it's only grief." "Okay. And I'm not taking sides in your marriage. You always liked her." "I did not always like her. Mom. I wanted to like her. That's different." He smiled. I continued. "You do not have to hide Paul from Tessa. You also do not get to use Paul as a reason she can never understand you. She says that. She's right. She's enjoying being right a lot lately. She has been wrong recently. Let her enjoy the change." He laughed again, then pressed both hands over his face. "I missed you," he said into his palms. The words tightened something in my chest. "I missed you too." He dropped his hands. I did not cross the room immediately. Neither did he. Then he stood and I met him halfway. He held me harder than he had at the airport. I felt his shoulders shake once. I put my hand against the back of his head as I had when he was young, but I did not tell him everything would be fine. We stood there until neither of us needed to pretend the hug had fixed us. When we separated, he noticed the crooked clay vessel on the shelf. "What is that?" "Art. It has a hole. It's negotiating gravity. It lost. Art can be complicated." I showed him photographs from the residency, the West Studio, Raphael beneath the oppressive ceiling, Monique's watercolor, the market fountain. Daniel asked questions without checking his phone. At noon, he glanced toward the kitchen. "Do you have anything to eat?" Gerald made soup. Aunt Janice made soup. The label was very clear. We ate at the kitchen table. Daniel opened the refrigerator and stared inside. But this time, he took out the soup himself, found a pot, and heated it without asking me where anything was. It was surprisingly good. "Don't tell Gerald," I said. "I'm telling everybody." Before he left, he asked whether I wanted to have dinner with him and Tessa that week. "I'm seeing Ruth Thursday." "Wednesday? I work late." "Friday. Friday is fine." He stopped at the door. "We could come here," he said. "No." The word came out faster than necessary. He nodded. "Our place, then." "You'll cook?" "Tessa will cook. That is not what I asked. I'll assist. You move dishes 6 feet. It's an essential role." He kissed my cheek and left. The house felt quiet afterward, but not abandoned. Tessa called that evening. "I heard he came," she said. "He told you?" "Before and after. Progress." "Was it all right?" "It was honest." She breathed out. "I'd like to talk to you too," she said. "Not with Daniel." "All right?" Is that encouragement in your regular voice? Possibly. She came to the art center the next afternoon while the pottery class was cleaning up. This time she accepted tea. We sat in the printmaking room where she had first called me about Daniel's visit. "My first apology wasn't enough," she said. "You did apologize." I explained myself. "That's not always the same thing." I waited. She held the paper cup between both hands. When I said, "Widows make everything about the past," I wasn't only angry, I was contemptuous. I wanted to make you smaller so I wouldn't have to consider that Daniel might be the one who had lied. The exact sentence entered the room again. It had lost some of its power, but not all. I was afraid of marrying into a family where a dead man would always be the most important person, she continued. I thought every story about Paul was a warning that I would never matter as much. Instead of asking Daniel what he was doing, I blamed you for keeping the past alive. Fear explains things, I said. It does not make them harmless. I know. And I am not your mother. Her face changed. I didn't say you were. You were fighting an old argument when you spoke to me. Yes. I picked up my tea. You don't need me to become a second mother, I said. You already have one. And I do not need you to become a daughter to prove this family works. What can I be? My daughter-in-law. She smiled faintly. That sounds very official. It includes tea and occasional criticism. Daniel says the criticism isn't occasional. Daniel exaggerates. We sat without forcing warmth that had not yet earned its place. Then Tessa asked, what was Paul really like when Daniel was young? I told her about the warm ketchup chili, the 6 silent days, the gas station outside Roanoke. I also told her how Paul used to stand in Daniel's doorway after an argument, unable to apologize, leaving folded laundry on the floor as if clean socks could speak for him. Tessa listened. That sounds familiar, she said. Daniel came mostly assembled, not entirely. Her laugh was softer this time. At the door, she paused beneath the spinning red bird. We want to host your birthday dinner, she said. My birthday is 3 weeks away. Daniel has a calendar. That is concerning. Friday night, just family, at our place. I thought about Sunday meals, empty chairs, and the difference between being invited and being expected. I'd like that, I said. That night, Daniel called with Tessa beside him. He made a point of announcing that I was on speaker. Mom, he said, do you still have Dad's cufflinks? I looked toward the staircase. Yes, I'd like to wear them to your birthday dinner. Tessa's voice came through clearly. I know he's asking. Daniel sighed. She is literally holding the phone. The velvet box waited upstairs beneath Paul's folded handkerchief. Ask me when you come, I said. They came on Wednesday after work. Daniel wore a dress shirt with French cuffs beneath his jacket, which meant he had planned further ahead than I had. You dressed for the occasion, I said. I wanted to make sure they fit. Tessa held up a white bakery box. He bought pastry. Daniel looked betrayed. That's for all of us. What do you want? I asked. The cufflinks. At least he's honest, Tessa said. We went into the kitchen. Daniel put the bakery box on the table but did not open it. He stood while Tessa and I sat. This feels formal, he said. You chose the shirt. I'm asking in person like you wanted. I know. He glanced at Tessa. She raised both hands. I am here as a witness, not an attorney. Daniel took a breath. Mom, I'd like to wear Dad's cufflinks to your birthday dinner. I want Tessa to know I'm wearing them, and I want the family to know where they came from if anybody asks. Why my birthday? He thought about it. Because I don't want the first time I wear them to be another ceremony, he said. I want it to be dinner. That was the right answer, though I had not known there was one. I went upstairs alone. The dresser drawer stuck halfway. I pulled, and it came loose with its usual complaint. Paul's watch shifted against the wood. Beneath the folded handkerchief, the velvet box waited where I had placed it after the wedding. When I returned, Daniel was still standing. I set the box on the table between us. You can sit down, I said. I'm okay. You look like you're waiting for a medical diagnosis. He sat. I opened the box. The cufflinks caught the kitchen light exactly as they had when I polished them. Little lines circled the silver edges. One clasp was slightly looser than the other. Your father wore these when we got married, I said. I know. He also wore them to your college graduation, though his shirt cuffs were too tight and his hands started turning purple. Daniel smiled. I remember him complaining. He refused to take them off because he thought the shirt looked expensive. It did not, Tessa said. You've seen the pictures? Daniel showed me. He glanced at her, mildly embarrassed. That's allowed, I told him. I know. I lifted the box and held it out. Daniel did not take it immediately. Are you sure? He asked. They were always meant for you. His fingers closed around the velvet. I'm sorry the first time. I know. No, let me finish. I waited. I'm sorry I made something Dad gave me into something that hurt you. I nodded. He looked down at the box. Thank you, he said. Tessa helped him fasten the cufflinks. The right one went in easily. The left refused to pass through the buttonhole. Your hands are too big, she said. That's not how cufflinks work. Then your shirt is defective. My shirt is fine. I took his wrist and turned the cuff. You're pushing it through the wrong side. There's a wrong side? There are always more wrong sides than people admit. I guided the silver post through the hole. Daniel folded the clasp into place. Paul's cufflink rested against my son's wrist. For an instant, the sight hurt. Then Daniel reached for the bakery box. Croissant? He asked. The birthday dinner began at 6:30 because Tessa said 6 had proved emotionally unreliable. When I reached their apartment, I could smell something burning from the hallway. Daniel opened the door wearing the cufflinks and a kitchen towel over one shoulder. Before you say anything, the smoke alarm is overly sensitive. I haven't said anything. Your face has several voices. Behind him, Tessa called, The potatoes are ruined. They're crisp. They're geological. I handed Daniel a bottle of wine. You cooked? I am cooking. He has been cooking since noon, Tessa said. I started at 4. You started worrying at noon. Their apartment had been rearranged to fit everyone. The coffee table stood against the wall. 2 borrowed chairs extended the dining table. Small glass vases held flowers from the grocery store, none perfectly matched. Ruth arrived carrying a gift bag and wearing both world's best grandma apparel and matching pearl earrings. Elegance is about balance, she told me. Janice and Gerald came next. Gerald was a wide, quiet man with a gray beard and the wary expression of someone who had been promised dinner but suspected speeches. He handed Daniel a covered pot. What's this? Daniel asked. Soup, Gerald said. We have dinner. Janice said there might be a problem. I said there would be a problem, Janice corrected. Walter and Lorraine arrived with cake. Lorraine hugged me. Walter kissed my cheek, and within 5 minutes he and Gerald were examining a loose cabinet hinge as though they had been assigned to a repair crew. Do not dismantle anything, Tessa warned them. We're looking, Walter said. You looked at your dining table for 6 weeks. It required study. Daniel carried a platter from the kitchen and set it on the table. The pot roast was darker than mine, with one end approaching black. The carrots were uneven. The potatoes made a hard sound when he moved them with the serving spoon. It's rustic, he said. It has survived something, Ruth agreed. I used Mom's recipe. You called me 3 times and ignored every answer, I said. You said cook it until tender. I also gave you a temperature. The oven runs hot. Tessa shook her head. The oven does not run hot. Daniel looked at Gerald. Good thing we have soup. Gerald nodded. Always. We sat. Daniel took the end nearest the kitchen. Tessa sat beside him. I was placed between Ruth and Janice directly across from Walter and Lorraine. No one asked me to serve. Daniel carved the roast himself. The first slice resisted. He pressed harder, and the meat shot sideways onto the platter. Should we pray? Janice asked. For the roast, Ruth said. It's too late, Gerald told them. The meat was dry, the carrots undercooked, and the potatoes nearly indestructible. It was one of the best meals I had eaten in years. Halfway through, Lorraine noticed Daniel's wrists. Are those Paul's cufflinks? Daniel looked at me, then at Tessa. Yes, he said. Mom brought them to the ceremony because I asked her to. The table quieted. He did not hurry past it. I was afraid to tell Tessa I wanted them, he continued. That was my mistake. I'm wearing them tonight because I'd like Dad to be part of the evening without pretending Mom is the only one who misses him. Tessa rested her hand on his forearm. They suit you, Lorraine said. Walter raised his glass. To Paul, the words could have become heavy. They did not. Janice lifted her wine. He would have complained about the potatoes. He complained about all potatoes, I said. He believed mashed potatoes were suspicious, Daniel added. They hide the condition of the potato, Janice said in a deep imitation of Paul's voice. That is exactly what he said, I told her. Everyone laughed, even Tessa. After dinner, Daniel brought out the cake. There were too many candles and they leaned toward one another in the frosting. This is a fire code violation, I said. You work in arts administration, Ruth replied. Use your influence. They sang. Gerald stopped halfway through because he claimed the song repeated itself. I blew out the candles while Daniel held the cake. What did you wish for? He asked. If I tell you, your aunt will organize it. Correct, Janice said. Daniel cut the first slice and placed it in front of me. It had a thick band of frosting. Before anyone else ate, Walter stood with his glass. I was told there would be no speeches, he said. There were not supposed to be, Lorraine replied. This is a statement with a glass. He welcomed me home from New Mexico and said he hoped I would keep going places that made the rest of them worry about whether I had enough phone chargers. Then Daniel stood. He did not have a glass. He held the cake knife. Put that down, Tessa said. He looked at it, laughed, and laid it on the table. I'm not good at speeches, he began. You were good at your vows, Maribel would have said if she were there. The thought passed through me, but I let it go. Daniel looked directly at me. Mom, you made home feel like a place that would always be ready when I arrived. I got so used to that, I forgot you were a person living there before and after I walked through the door. No one moved. I thought loving me meant staying the same, he continued. I'm glad you didn't. My eyes filled. He glanced at his cuffs. And I'm glad you kept Dad with us, even when I made it harder than it had to be. He did not say more. He did not need to. No one applauded. Lorraine reached for my hand across the table. Janice wiped her cheek and claimed the candles had irritated her eyes. Gerald served himself a second slice of cake. Later, while everyone moved into the living room, I carried my plate toward the kitchen. Tessa intercepted me. Leave it. I'm walking past the sink. You are a guest. I'm also capable of carrying porcelain. She took the plate from my hand. Go sit down. Is this how you speak to all older women? Only the difficult ones. I smiled and let her take it. In the living room, Walter proposed that the family dinners rotate between houses once a month. Once a month? Janice said. People could die between meals. Then they won't need a chair, Gerald replied. Janice stared at him, then laughed so hard she leaned against his shoulder. Daniel looked at me. What do you think? Once a month sounds good. Your place first? He asked. No. He smiled. Aunt Janice? I don't cook. Gerald makes soup. Everyone turned toward Gerald. He sighed. Fine. The matter was settled without me opening a calendar. As people collected coats, Margot called from New Mexico. I stepped into the hallway to answer. We have a spring program, she said after wishing me a happy birthday. 2 weeks this time. Think about it. I will. That is not a no. You taught me well. When I returned, Daniel was helping Tessa wrap 2 slices of cake for me. He wore his jacket now, but the silver cufflinks remained visible beneath the sleeves. Everything okay? He asked. New Mexico wants me back in the spring. His expression shifted. The old concern appeared first. Then he nodded. Do you want to go? I don't know yet. Let me know when you decide. Not before. Not so he could approve. When I decided. I will, I said. At the door, Tessa handed me the cake container. Thank you for coming. Thank you for hosting. Next time, I'm making the roast. There may not be a next time for that roast. Daniel hugged me. See you Sunday? He asked, testing the words with a smile. Not this Sunday. I'm going to a terrible play with Ruth. Tuesday? Call me. I always call. You announce. I'm learning. Tessa stood behind him, holding the door. She did not look at his cufflinks with fear or at me with apology. She simply looked tired and happy in her own home. As I walked down the stairs, I heard Daniel say something about the leftovers. Then Tessa said, Your father would have eaten those potatoes. He would have complained first. He could do both. Their laughter followed me to the next landing. I carried my cake out into the cold, leaving them upstairs with the dishes, the ruined potatoes, and all the people who had helped them arrive there.